This evening's Select Board meeting to order, Monday, January 27th. Michelle Pryor, joined by Vice Chair John Fallon, members Anthea Brady, Bill McGonigal, Mike Betancourt, and our Town Manager, Beth Rudolph. Thanks for your patience. We had a few things to talk about in executive session. We're going to skip the Town Manager's report for now, but if anyone is here for public comment on anything that's not on the agenda, please make yourself known and come to the table if there's only one hand, so please come to the table. Then we will go through our business agenda after public comment.
Hi, everybody. Hi. My name is David Anderson. I've served on the Winchester Center train station working group for 13 years, I think. Which I got onto because I was, I think at the time the project started, I was chair of the design review committee, and then I sort of have stayed with it through the process. So I attended the online presentation given by the T last week, and offered the question to the project manager Stephen Ray that I did not see. There was still no mention of the sort of reconditioning of the cleaning and reconditioning of the concrete abutments at the bridges at Waterfield and all sides of the at Quill Rotary. And it's been sort of a sticking point for me going through that the town was going to be consulted in some of the color and finish selections, and we were excluded. But that's sort of, water over the dam at this point. But I wanted to know, was there a process coming up for the painting of the steel at the bridges? And Stephen Ray said off the top of his head that he thought that work had been VE'd out early on, and then checked, and indeed it had been excluded from the scope. Which was not completely surprising to me, but sort of thinking back on it, it was like, I think it was excluded from the scope when it was a $15 million project and not a $50 million project. And I think there was an effort to just get the project off the ground. And so the fact that it's now a $50 million project and is so much more extensive, that leaving the conditions that are there now, that are now 13 years worse than when we started the process, is really short money. I'm not saying it's not money, because it's you have to, there's a process you have to go to clean the concrete, and if you're going to coat it, you have to do it properly. The bridge probably has lead paint. There's pigeon detritus up there. So I mean, it's not nothing, but it's relatively short money compared to the rest of the project. And I think it would be in such stark contrast to the everything else that looks new, or at least looks treated, that it would really be embarrassing. And it's not an embarrassment to the town, but where the criticism would go.
Yep.
So I just felt it was incumbent on me to raise that issue before too much time passes and more leverage is lost with the team.
Thank you for raising the issue on the public meeting and in your email, and our delegation has raised that with the T. And I don't know, Mike, if you have a comment, but I think it's just more volume of the same concern. And I know Senator Lewis has specifically pointed out underneath the bridges and cleaning up that stonework. So thanks for going on the record and for your comment today.
Yeah, I was just briefly going to say thanks, Michelle. Thank you, David, first of all, for your involvement over the years on this. The project would not have gotten done and to this point without you, so I appreciate that. It's been
keeps me young.
Yes, you are aging in reverse, so that's good to know. But
it's making me old.
beyond kind of some of the aesthetic issues with that, and really the contrast with the new and the old, do you see any structural or long-term integrity issues with them not doing this kind of prophylactically?
I'm sure it was the bridge has been tested structurally.
Yep.
And so I'm sure it's something that the T feels like they could get away with.
Yep.
But, you just have to go look at Wedgemere Station, the stairs and the railings there. There are literally balusters that come down that do not meet the concrete.
So you think it would accelerate the deterioration if this would not done? Okay,
Absolutely.
so that's my
So
question, really.
The concrete is stained because the steel is rusting.
Yep.
Right.
And so it's the accelerated destruction of the station and the fact that the concrete platforms were failing was because of a lack of basic maintenance, which was, dealing with concrete does have to be repaired and paint does have to be replaced.
Yep.
And to just ignore it further, to ignore like the most basic, housekeeping in terms of your public infrastructure, and to do everything else just seems egregious.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for reaching out. Thanks for coming
Yep.
out tonight. Appreciate it. We may be
Thanks,
circling
everybody.
back to you. Who knows? Thank you. Okay. So now we're going to jump to the business agenda. We have first order of business are appointments to the Winchester Committee on Community Preservation. We have 2 candidates from other boards and 1 select board appointee with 2 candidates to interview. So I'm going to take it in exactly that order. The first candidate who's here this evening, and thank you for coming, is Michelle Bergstrom, who's the nominee from the Affordable Housing Trust and the Housing Partnership appointee. And I don't believe we have Jason Capodanno here tonight from Field Management, so we'll talk about that next. So before we start, I'd reached out to Ms. Bergstrom this afternoon. We have, in the bylaw, which is in our packet, there's a few existing boards and committees who are putting forth members to the WCCP, and a couple of specific appointments that specify does not hold elected or appointed office. So the Select Board has an appointee, an at-large appointee that we'll make tonight, and the Finance Committee has 1 resident of the town of Winchester who does not hold elected or appointed office. Ms. Bergstrom, in addition to all the other things she's on and other boards that she's on, is an elected member of our school committee. And as such, the school committee is not one of the named members. Conservation, Historical Commission, Field Management, the Housing Authority, the Planning Board are. So I'm going to ask Ms. Bergstrom to come up, and she can certainly describe her experience with the CPA and her availability to do the work, which is going to be a lot of meetings and hours. But my understanding is the Capital Planning Committee intends to put forth Chris Nixon. So we may be in the position of having 2 of these 9 seats held by current school committee members, which I understand the bylaw was written as it was, but that causes me a bit of concern. So in any case, let's all take this up as a board. And Michelle Bergstrom, if you'd like to come forward. Actually, I'll leave it for the board. Do we have questions? I think we all know who Ms. Bergstrom is, but do we have any questions about her and the CPA? Or please come forward if you'd like anyway.
I'm going to invite Marty and John to come forward as well.
Okay, that's fine.
Given that I'm in the unique position that I also did not apply for this role, but I have been nominated by 2 different boards in town for this role. And so I would like to give them the opportunity to speak first about this role and why they had nominated me to be part of this with unanimous support of both of those boards.
Okay, I'll begin. My name is John Serbier. I chair the Housing Partnership Board in there. And the directions that we were given was to nominate or appoint 1 member from the Housing Partnership Board and the Affordable Housing Trust to this CPA committee. And right from the beginning, Marty Jones, who chairs the Affordable Housing Trust, and I have coordinated and collaborated between the 2 boards to come up with a single selection. At the December meeting, the Housing Partnership Board voted unanimously and enthusiastically to appoint Michelle Bergstrom to this position in there. And there are really two reasons that guided that. She has demonstrated an understanding of housing issues and the importance of providing housing that's affordable over a range of incomes. She's also proven through her school committee work that she can work collaboratively and cooperatively with others, which is going to be an important function of this committee. And the people that we considered were the at-large members of the Housing Partnership Board which is really 6 people. The members of the Affordable Housing Trust that were not members of other committees, such as the Select Board or the Town Manager. On that, we excluded the committees that were already represented, such as the ones you just listed: Conservation, Planning, the Housing Authority, in there. And so no one told us to exclude, any member of any other committees. And so, I would just emphasize that there was excitement and that Michelle was a super well-qualified person to fill this position. So, Marty, what do you want to add?
Yeah, so I think it was our January meeting. I'm not sure when it
You
was.
were here 2 weeks ago.
Yes, exactly.
160 Forest. Don't leave.
The trust, so the trust met after the Housing Partnership Board had taken their action, and we were thrilled to hear that the Partnership Board had endorsed her and that Michelle was interested in serving, really for the reasons that John mentioned. Michelle, certainly by being on the Housing Partnership Board for a long time, well aware of housing issues and understands them, and would be a good representative for that. The other thing that we talked about some at our meeting is that this committee is being formed at an interesting time in its life, because its first mission is going to be to figure out the process and to figure out how the CPA approval process, nomination process, application process is going to work. And Michelle understands a lot of town boards and processes and how the systems work in our town, unlike many of us like me that are housing people and not so as well versed in town processes. And we felt that those skills that she brought to the table, particularly at this time of the committee, are really essential. Once the committee gets established and all these, procedures are in place, in years to come, it will be reviewing applications and deciding how you trade off between historic preservation and housing and which projects are better. But this is a really important time for kind of figuring out process. So I think that's the other thing that we think Michelle really brings to the table for the Community Preservation Act as we kind of launch it in Winchester. So we also did vote unanimously to recommend her as the housing appointee for this committee.
Okay. And would you like to say anything? Or I could ask people if they have questions.
I just am grateful for the support of both of these boards. I've come to learn so much about housing in my role on the Housing Partnership Board, such that I am no longer a school committee member when I sit on that board. I can provide the information that the schools have that's important and valuable to housing, but what I have really gained from it is been able to sit back and learn about housing issues in Winchester and about how to provide affordable housing to citizens in Winchester. I think I'm in a unique role because the schools desperately need people to be able to have affordable housing here in Winchester, not only for the families that come to us, but even for our own employees. It's no joke to anyone that housing in the Boston area is outrageous and becoming even more so. And I think that we need to be passionate as a community in supporting the kids and families that come to us. And that's why the work that these two boards do are so important to this town and so important to me. I did sit on the CPA group that helped initially do the work through the CPA Coalition, so I'm also well-versed in the way many of the other towns around us have organized their boards and committees and have thought about the CPA, and spend a lot of time working with Marty and among other people on that board, just learning about the setup, the beginning, and the process. And I would also note that this is a 2-year position. So while some of the positions will roll on as 3-year, this one rolls off in 27. If we find it's a conflict of interest for people, you've only got me around for 2 years. And I'm happy to take any questions.
So, Michelle, you certainly qualified and you do a great job. I just look at you as, your role in the school committee with the budget, and it's a lot going on there. I'm like, how is this person going to fit all of these things into their life? And I'm sure you've thought about it, but, as Mike points out, the first year is probably the year with the most work. And you're going to be able to fit all that in your life and allocate the time. I know you've already considered that, and it's an obvious question, but it is a lot.
It is. John, I managed being a school committee member with a toddler, an elementary schooler, and a middle schooler.
Yeah.
The two larger ones are off to college now. I think if I could manage all of the union meetings and negotiations and subcommittees on school committee, I think that I can probably
Squeeze one more thing in?
find the time for the things that are important.
Excellent.
I would just add that Michelle is one of our more reliable attendees on the Housing Partnership Board. So
Great.
It's an
we have some
important
people
point,
who are
John.
not.
It is, yes.
We know that.
It's good to have perfect attendance.
Even as an adult.
That's right.
Other questions for Michelle?
I actually have a question for, is it Mr. Subir or Dr. Subir?
Excuse me?
Is it Mr. or Dr. Subir? I forget.
Mr.
Mr. Subir.
In South America, I referred to as a doctor, but not up here.
I'm just kind of curious about your process. Did you start by kind of identifying Ms. Bergstrom as your hopeful designee here, or did you poll the trust to see where the interests lied?
The latter.
Okay. And
I talked with Marty, who obviously was in touch or had been in touch with members of the Housing Trust, and within the Housing Partnership Board, I made inquiries of, other people, whether they would be interested. The one person who served on the initial working committee from the Housing Partnership Board was Steve Campbell, and I talked with Steve, and he very much would have liked to have continued, but there were two factors or two reasons in his kind of personal and professional life that he thought he did not have the time to devote to this new committee. So we really, considered everyone. We didn't start out saying Michelle's our person.
Okay. And did
We
anybody
ended up at that.
Sure. That's what it kind of sounded like when you made your presentation earlier. And so did anybody else express any interest in serving in this role, or was it really just Michelle?
Not that I can remember. Do you remember, Marty?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
And Michelle, I guess for you, I understand that the Capital Planning Committee is designating Mr. Nixon as their representative.
Yep.
So we're going to have two members. I know Mr. Nixon's up for election this spring, on this 9-member committee who could be school committee members. And it's not supposed to be a board that's focused on schools, except for to the extent that they might have open space or historic buildings that need to be, preserved. How are you going to make sure that this doesn't become kind of an extension of the school committee, given that an outside number of members on the board here are going to have dual roles between both the CPA committee and the school committee? And this is something which I have already expressed significant concern over at last town meeting, where my preference is that we have more people involved more people in independent positions, and we don't just have the same small number of people doing everything around town, because some of you might move on or move out and leave us with a big vacuum of designated experienced people. So, having 2 members of the school committee on this board kind of really sets us up for that problem, and it worries me, as qualified as you and Mr. Nixon both are.
So I have a question back for you, Mr.
Sure.
McGonigal. So how do you see school committee members having a conflict of interest on the CPA?
Well, because you're going to have to weigh where the money goes, and there will be petitions for things that are historic preservations and might be school buildings, and you'll have to make sure you're looking at those independently from the other petitions that come before you as well. And so, your first priority to the CPA is to the CPA. And, being a school committee member and having 2 school committee members who are not identified as the sort of people who are owed seats on this board, it seems a little fearful that we might be kind of like backdooring the school committee into this. And, my preference would be to have, again, more people who are not holding any risk of being beholden to other elected offices in town, because you have to answer to those people who elected you to the school committee first and foremost, before your responsibility may be to an appointed board. So
I've had seats on boards throughout town as a school committee member, and I think that it is a responsibility that you take on when you do that, to wear the hat of the seat that you sit in. Currently, I also sit on the Housing Partnership Board, where I can provide insight from the schools, but my job is to advocate for housing. And that's what I have consistently done in affordable housing for our residents as a member of that board. As Marty and John have noted, I've demonstrated the ability to do that over time. I think it is,
Does the interest of the school committee overlap or conflict at any time with the interest of the Affordable Housing Trust?
I could argue that about any member that sits on the CPA, Mr. McGonigal.
Well, then you have to.
Yeah.
Because there is an overlap between where these funds go, and you represent a body that is going to want those funds. So, again, having 2 members of this 9-member committee being elected school committee officials is a little worrisome for me, because you're going to want this money as a school committee member.
So the members who set up this commission had initially requested a school committee member be on this board.
Yes, and that was
They
voted
do.
down.
It does. And do you know who was the largest voice and advocate for not doing that?
Well, I don't know why that's...
It is actually a little bit relevant right
Okay,
now.
then please tell me why it's relevant.
Because at the time, I had argued that there not be a school committee member sitting on the CPA, because we would have access to the CPA through at least other 3 boards and committees in town. So I could foresee a time where there might be school committee members who sat on other boards who might also have overlapping interests. Fields management is one, the capital planning committee is one, and housing partnership and the housing trust are others.
Yeah, let me just jump in, and Michael can comment on this as well. One of the things that's surprised me and pleased me in my tenure on the Housing Partnership Board is that the representatives of the other town boards do not wear that hat primarily and exclusively. As Michelle said in her comments, she really focuses in on housing. And so, if you listen to the Housing Partnership Board meetings and watch who's talking, you would have a hard time telling that geez, Michelle is on the school committee, or David Miller is on the Conservation Commission, or John Cortese is on the Planning Board. So that it doesn't play out that way in there. And in terms of a conflict of interest, there certainly have been issues where the use of school property comes up in there. I don't see that as a major source, or, in terms of the use of CPA money, and the position that's been taken by the Housing Partnership Board is to work cooperatively with the school committee to say, what's in the best interest of the town in there. And so, we will seek out the views and the input from the school superintendent and the individual school committee members to make sure that the solution or the approach that's recommended by the Housing Partnership Board is workable for both boards. So it doesn't, I'm sitting here saying, can I think of an either-or example? And I can't on that. Michael, you want to comment? Because, you represent the select board.
Yeah, and thank you, Michelle, for stepping up and volunteering. I think the questions are fair, and we should address them at some point. I don't know that it's Ms. Bergstrom's responsibility to resolve this issue with, overrepresentation from the school committee.
Yeah.
I can say, but it's my expectation that the WCCP will, as they get their feet on the ground, will start asking these questions too, and we'll look at in future years what policies we can develop, just like we do here. And I think it would be appropriate at some point to say we want maximum representation, and maybe it's not one, there's only one person from each board on the WCCP. So maybe we would have to make the choice between the Capitals appointment and the select board appointment, and have those conversations. I have worked with Michelle for many years, and her commitment to affordable housing is really unparalleled as a volunteer. She was a part of both the WCCP development process, but also the campaign for the CPA, and member of the housing team that put together the section for the CPA report that we did and the study that we did. So, which was a very much heavy lifting and a lot of work. So, I'm glad that Michelle is here. It was unanimous in both the partnership board and the Affordable Housing Trust. I'm the board's representative to both, and I think part of our process as well here is to respect our stakeholder groups and their appointments through the process, and then on our end not let this go, but make a commitment to looking at some policies as we move forward and looking to what other CPA communities do as well. And it may be that at a certain point we have to create some policies about and directing some of these appointing authorities on what our expectations are. But Michelle is right. There were a lot of folks on the school committee side that were not happy that they weren't going to have a direct seat. That's, I think this is the result that we see naturally coming from that, and what part of the reasoning that we had at that point. So happy to support Michelle's appointment, and I look forward to seeing how the WCCP develops what they learn, what we learn, and what policies we put forward to make it as effective to achieving good government as possible.
Yep. Go ahead, and then we'll.
So Michelle, I have a question for you, and then I'll just caveat that you're a very qualified candidate, as judging by what Mike just said, and both committees voting unanimously in favor of you. So sort of caveat in advance. The question I have for you is something that was mentioned about sort of understanding of the process of how things go. And so as we were going through the process of developing the WCCP and doing the study last year and sort of walking through all of this, I think there was a lot of discussion about who was going to be on these boards, who they might be, what might be sort of an overlap specifically on the boards, and then coming out of the town meeting where we nailed down this list and went forward with, they were also doing I think the study committee that Michelle and Mike were closely involved with, was getting a sense of like, what would some of the process look like, and what would the alignment of the process with other things like capital and the town manager and select board and projects like that. So I would say this is probably not, there's not going to be a lack of process in the WCCP. So my question for you is like, what are you going to bring to process on this board that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like so 7, clearly 7 people from appointed or elected boards, a member of the planning board who's on an elected board, potentially a member of capital planning who's on an elected board, and you yourself on an elected board. What would you bring in terms of the planning process that somebody who might not have as fresh of a look to planning that might, sorry, I'm phrasing that wrong, that might be sort of like, I'm new to this, but here are my ideas because I haven't been in this, and you know, what sort of, where are you adding value there, and how might that compare to someone who doesn't have a background in some of the more process-oriented things in terms of the operation of school committee and other projects?
So it's a lot of ifs, but I will.
Sorry, it was
That's
a little
okay.
long lead-in and background.
No, I don't mind the long lead-in. It's hard to presume who you're up against, though. Like if
Well, if you're thinking of members of, because you're being appointed by the Housing Partnership Board
Right.
and Affordable Housing Trust, so what are you bringing in terms of process versus somebody who's not elected member or who has a different background from those boards
Right.
could bring in terms of process?
I think the biggest thing that I've learned about being a member of a board is that it's important to listen as it is to speak. So I think that my background and experience gives me the opportunity to be able to sit back and listen to what everybody else is bringing to the table, and realizing that it's not what I bring to the process. What I bring to the process is me and my experience with process. So if every 9 members around the board, I mean, as we all know, 5 members around the board, if we all have a position and an interest and are ready to jump in and speak and just argue for that particular position or interest, it's going to slow way, way down. But we need to be able to give everybody the space to talk and have the opportunity for everyone to have a seat at the table. And I really think that's something you really learn from experience on these boards.
Thank you. I think I just sort of the other comment I want to make is that as we were developing this, there was, I think as you all know, and Mike, as you know from the conversations, and Beth, like there was a lot of discussion of who had what pieces and whether the select board ourselves had any sort of role in terms of this. And to what John said, we kind of said, like, it's cool. We don't necessarily want a seat on this board because it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to be a lot of meetings. It's going to be a lot of startup, and you know, something sort of to give that opportunity, as Bill mentions, to kind of let some people in who haven't had quite as strong a commitment to kind of build into those roles. So, you know, that's certainly a consideration of just how are we just engaging more people in a deeper level within the town. And I do share the concerns, not that you would, you know, not act in the best interest of the town and the CPA, but I share the concerns of having multiple members from an elected board appointed from their not from the boards they are elected to be members of the committee. I think that's, as you know, it's something we created a bylaw, but a bylaw is not a policy. We had that conversation a lot. The bylaw is not the policy. The bylaw is the bylaw. The policies go sort of, or the procedures go around what the policy is. And we didn't create the procedures, and I think that's where we get into sort of a challenging look at how we're appointing everybody. So it's a collective look, and the select board has,
One of the questions that we asked at the very beginning of this process back in November after the election was whether our representative had to be a member of the Housing Partnership Board or the Affordable Housing Trust, whether we could recruit, as Bill, as you said, someone new to participate in this process. The guidance we got was, no, it should be a member of one of the existing two committees.
I disagree with that. But
Well, that's what the bylaw says.
That's what the bylaw says.
Yeah.
it's just designated by the authority, isn't it?
One member.
One member of the
Member
housing.
of.
You're right. I take it back. My apologies.
So, I mean, we explored the possibility of bringing in someone totally new and said, the guidance we got was, no, you should follow the direction. And, the Housing Partnership Board is 13 members, but only 6 are appointed by the town moderator. So if we don't choose someone from another committee, we're eliminating 7 members.
So I think we can probably wrap this up and someone can make a motion. When I talked to Michelle this afternoon, I told her this is kind of where I'm sitting. Select Board has 3 appointments to make. If capital planning puts forth another school committee member, that's not going to pass before our board, but this vote does. And from my perspective, I know Michelle would serve well. I know she will do and be a great advocate for housing. And maybe to Mike's point, we need to update the bylaw, because we could just add the words, who holds no other elected or appointed office to every one of these definitions. Planning board might be a challenge, but everything else, you could find a person who's not otherwise elected. So for me, the concern is 2/9 of a board that's just starting out, filled by people who are elected to serve. I think about, I'm elected to select board, my priority and my focus is here. And I feel like that's the cause I serve first. Not that Michelle can't serve and wear multiple hats. Not that others of us can't as well. But let's just see if Michelle is appointed tonight. I think she would do a great job. So I think we can.
All right.
Feel free to say something, Michelle, but I think we can take a vote. And I don't think we have more questions for you.
I move that we appoint Michelle Bergstrom from the Affordable Housing Trust Housing Partnership to the Winchester Committee for Community Preservation with a term to expire on December 5th, 2027.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I'll abstain.
I have the same. I'm concerned about the
Okay.
Other
So
plan.
that's 3 yeses. Thank you.
And also, if I can, I guess retroactively apply a friendly amendment here, that, we establish and we speak to capital planning and some of the other appointing authorities and look to review policies around this. It was extremely difficult to get to the point where we were able to form the criteria around the WCCP. I mean, we're talking months and months and months of negotiation. And
You have the scars.
And yes, I still do. So I think we're trying to meet everybody where they were, and there is part of a process that automatically, I think some of this will be filtered out, the natural course of things will let. So I guess my point is for us, and we don't necessarily need to vote, but to make a commitment to work with the WCCP, chair, and provide some updates to this, even if we need to take town meeting action to make an amendment or not. In probably, obviously not in the spring, but maybe every year in the fall that we review it. So.
Yep.
It seems like we've had 2 weeks of difficult appointments where we're wrestling with policies that put in practice we're not maybe super enthused of. And
Yeah.
Michelle, I apologize for my grilling. It has nothing to do with your individual qualities. It has to do with how is this going to be structured going forward and what's going to best serve the town when you're not around.
Yeah, no worries. I think we share some of the same common interests.
Yeah, and I think all across our town government, we really have to work to get more new people involved. And it's great that we have some select people who give us 200% of their lives.
Yep.
We need to make sure we have a deep bench, though. So.
And absolutely, and thanks to you, I have 2 years to work to mentor somebody in Housing Partnership or the Housing Trust to be able to take my role then.
Or the school committee, all sorts of things. So,
Okay,
Let's do it.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Marty. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Marty. Thanks, John. Thank you, Michelle. So next up is field management. Jason Capodanno is not able to be here tonight. Does the select board wish to talk with him, understand his capacity and ability to do this role, or do you want to make an appointment? I could go either way. I asked Patty to kind of keep him on notice that we may want to have him back in 2 weeks, but I want to leave that for the body. How do you want to handle with that candidate?
I mean, I'd be happy to move Jason forward at this point. I mean, he was he's an extremely hard worker and committed servant to the community through the baseball and softball programs and through field management. He was a major part of the CPA development effort, and I think he would be enormously valuable. It is their recommendation, as I'm understanding it as well, that I think we should honor, and I don't see any other similar conflicts that we've discussed with his appointment.
I agree. I sit
Is that a
on-
motion, by the way?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, that just sounded like a
I know. All my motions are like 5 minutes long, so
Make sure I know that there's an intent there.
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I'm sit on the field management committee, so I know that this was asked of the members. Jason volunteered, has done a lot of work with that committee, so I'm comfortable with us moving forward, but have more exposure to him, so to the rest of the board.
I've abstained from every appointment where I didn't have any background on the applicant, and since I don't know Mr. Capodanno and I don't even have his resume, I just feel it's best for me to abstain.
Okay. Well, we have a motion. Yes, we have a second, I believe. Any additional debate or discussion?
And we can, we can appoint him to keep things moving and have him come in at a later date as well, just to introduce himself.
Yes.
As time permits.
Sure. And I think when I was talking to Michelle Bergerson this afternoon, I said, don't like to talk about people without them in the room. So
Yeah.
if we're good, then let's, all those in favor of Mr. Capodanno?
Aye.
And I vote yes as well.
Abstain.
Bill abstain. Okay, he was on some of the planning committee work with us as well. Okay, so now, at long last, 2 new potential volunteers interested in this role. I'll invite you both up to the table. Mark Lunadoni and Christina Marshall. Hopefully I got your last name close to right, Mark. You'll let me know. We have your applications. If you could just, Christina, I'll start with you, but maybe just reintroduce yourself and kind of your interest, where you live. We do have all your applications, your resumes, them, why you're interested in the role. You've heard us a lot of time if you were just paying attention. And then Mark will do the same, but we'll have you both introduce yourselves, and I think we'll take questions, which each candidate one at a time. So, but if you want to just take a few minutes, please go ahead, Christina.
Sounds great. Good evening, everyone. My name is Christina Marshall. I live at 33 Oxford Street in Winchester. I've been a resident of the town since 2018. We just moved, so that hasn't been my address for a long time. But I found out about this through Bill. He suggested that I look into this appointment, and I was very excited when the town passed the CPA last fall. I think it's a great opportunity. My interest kind of originates in my day job, but really ends in my experience and my desire to help out Winchester. So I'm a lawyer. I do municipal work. I have for many years helped towns with town meeting proposals, including CPA. So I've reviewed a lot of CPA proposals from similar boards in other towns and provided opinions as to whether or not I think those are legally permissible uses of CPA funds. And I think it would be really great to be on the other side of that and come up with the proposals and help kind of do this for a town where I live. Where I'm, kind of personally invested. I have 3 small children, 2 are too young for school, but 1 is at Lynch right now. So, we'll be here for a long time, and I really would like to see the town be able to use these funds in a really productive way. And as I said in my letter, I don't have any particular notions as to where the money should go. I think the most important thing would be to get community input and really assign the money out in that way.
Thank you. And Mark?
My name is Mark Lunardoni. I have been a resident of Winchester for 45 years and 1 week. Moved into town in January of 1980. I'm retired. I spend my time, I volunteer for an organization called SCORE. I don't know if you're familiar with it, the Service Corps of Retired Executives. It's funded by the Small Business Administration. I have 50 years of general business experience. I come to you without an agenda. I'm simply looking for an opportunity to give back. And frankly, I'm looking for something to do with my time. Much of my business experience is in areas of negotiation, in areas of process, and simply evaluating, I did product strategy, so I would evaluate a lot of proposals and determine what was workable and what was not.
Okay, great. So we'll start with questions that if people have any for Ms. Marshall, and then we'll ask people if questions for Mr. Lunardoni, but any questions for?
Yes, I have one. This is a good one.
You don't need
So-
you to jump
yeah,
right
yeah.
in. Thanks.
Ms. Marshall, so what would your position be on having two members from a committee? How would you handle that? What's your recommendation since you're our resident expert?
Frankly,
That's a good question. Come on, listen. Yeah.
I think that you've landed on the right solution. You've got a situation that you didn't necessarily anticipate when you made these policies. I don't think that it's fair to punish otherwise qualified, nominees for that issue, but I think it's important and appropriate to keep an eye on that looking forward.
Thank you. That's good.
I would actually take that opportunity, though, to caveat. In my experience, I would want to bring my legal experience in a helpful way on the committee. I would not purport to act as town council. I don't think that that's helpful, when individuals who have certain backgrounds, decide to be the expert on things. I do think that my experience would help flag potential issues to bring to town council, but I am very cognizant of not letting those two roles overlap in other similar situations that I've been in. So,
Yeah, thank you.
Anthea?
Yeah. Someone asked you like your weaknesses in an interview, and mine is like getting stuck in process. So, from what you just said in terms of like not attempting to be town council, but using your background for identifying issues. What would you think would be sort of a helpful way that you could sort of intersect your sort of work role with your role in the CPA committee, and how could that sort of in this newly formed group, sort of what would be your sort of the role that you would take on in a newly functioning group? And as I pointed out before, in a newly functioning group with several members who have a lot of experience sitting in boards and committees.
Sure. Yeah. So I think in my legal experience, my work experience, I've seen, as I mentioned, I've seen a lot of proposals come up for approval by town meeting. And I think that that's given me kind of a good basis to understand what questions the committee should be asking in the first instance of certain proposals. Just by way of example, if you're dealing with a preservation request on pre-existing housing, what types of questions to ask for to really drill into, is this truly preservation, or is this something that maybe goes beyond the act? So I think that specifically would help. I think generally speaking, a lot of my day job just deals with process. And, again, being on the flip side of that, I think I could use a lot of those lessons to help build a good system. All of that said, like you said, there are a lot of appointees to this committee, and many of them have a lot more experience in Winchester specific issues that I wouldn't. I think that, it's important to have the perspective of, a person who might be kind of newer to these things, a person who's deeply committed to the future of the town, from the perspective of having young children in the town. And I think that is really where I could be the most valuable, is bringing that kind of unique perspective in. Thank you.
I'll go start with Mike.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to both of you for being willing to serve the community. From my perspective, I worked on the CPA process for over a year. It was a lot of hard work, and a lot of volunteers stepped up to make it happen. These two appointments, from my perspective, are the most valuable appointments that we have and are truly in the spirit of the CPA. We got a little bit top-heavy with government representatives, and that's not really how the CPA is supposed to be designed. So I think that will evolve over a period of time, but having more residents that aren't necessarily elected officials or in government is really ideal for us. To have both of you with such unique qualifications that are, it's really encouraging to me. So thank you so much. I certainly support both of you. And also having somebody that's been in town for a while and somebody that is newer, I think that adds to the diversity of conversation on the WCCP and, makes it a lot stronger of a group. So thank you. I certainly support both of you.
We'll have to pick one, though, because we only have one.
Yep.
But thank you, Bill. If you have any questions.
Just Ms.
Ms.
Marshall?
Marshall, and then we can switch.
Okay.
Unless we come back around.
No, just to follow up on something she said.
Okay.
She's my opposing counsel. This is actually the first time I've ever met her. So if I were a bit, I've had plenty of times to
Play nice,
test
Bill.
her. So I have no questions right now.
Okay.
I still managed to, have him flag me for this potential role. So.
There you go.
I'll speak to that when we deliberate.
Okay, so any questions for Mr. Lunadoni? I have one, which is, so the CPA is a lot of, obviously it's open space, recreation, affordable housing, and historical preservation. So in all of your work around Service Corps of retired executives, have you worked with nonprofit boards? Have you had projects that have sort of touched on open space, public good, older buildings? Just curious in the array of things that you've done.
Certainly in my mentoring for SCORE, I have worked with several not-for-profit organizations. I have not worked for any governments. The kind of clients we get really spans quite a few of those things, although I don't have deep knowledge into any of those. What I said I was a business generalist. Mm-hmm. What I said I had was an open mind and an ability to understand the process. And I've heard an interest here to bring new blood into being active in the town. And that is one thing I do represent. If this seems to be the way in,
Yep,
then I would hope you would welcome me.
great.
A similar question as I asked before. I think as you've articulated a lot of background and business experience and sort of how operations work, what would be in this board sort of your area of expertise and thinking again of like boards that are top heavy and how we deal with that? What do you think is the look for that?
I think my area of expertise is, again, listening to all voices and making sure that there is, that decisions are being made, consensus is being built, and to the extent that there's a danger that there are conflicts of interest, bringing no agenda to it, to the process, and making sure these things are talked out are things that I would expect I would do, which is not very different from what you would encounter in a business environment.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Guys? Bill? Mike?
Anthea asked my question.
Okay. So we do only get to pick one of you, but I will point out there are 6 other committees at the bottom of our agenda seeking volunteers. So should you not be the one that we put on the WCCP, the Audit Advisory Committee, my personal favorite, Cultural Council, there's many more opportunities to volunteer. And in fact, some of them I meet far less frequently, if that's of concern. Okay, so you can sit at the table, but we're now going to deliberate, or you can go back and take your seats in the audience if you wish, but we're going to make our decision.
Thank you.
Weigh the pros and cons, and then someone will make a motion. But I'll leave it open to the group, however you want to start to deliberate or make a motion.
I move that we appoint Christina Marshall to the Winchester Committee for Community Preservation with a term to expire on December 5th, 2027.
Second.
Any additional discussion?
I'll just say, I did recommend she step forward. I had many phone calls with her in an adversarial position, but they were all a delight. And if I could work with someone in that situation and then say, I want her working for me, that was why I asked her to step up and volunteer. And as I've said already a couple times today, I just want to see some young, new, fresher blood so we can start building a deeper bench in this town that's going to last a long time. So I'm a big supporter of Ms. Marshall tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just, agree there and say, again, I support both candidates. They are, uniquely qualified for these positions. And
Yes.
I hope whatever direction we move in that either one of them will stay with us and there will be openings, and we will probably be changing the makeup of the WCCP at some point anyway, and down the road I see the WCCP evolving into, as I was indicating before, more kind of bottom up than top down, and maybe excluding some more of these government-related positions. So certainly to support both candidates and support John's motion.
Okay.
Second, everything he said.
Yep, and I think I'll just note, Ms. Marshall, you're on the board of Children's Zone, so you've sort of got that board interaction. I know I talked with one of the other parents just to back channel on you a little bit, heard some glowing things. Mark certainly would encourage you, if this is how the vote goes, where'd you go? You're back there. I was like, wait. To certainly apply for other positions in town, we're always looking for volunteers. And I think you did hear, we want new folks to join our efforts and our boards. So I think with that, any additional discussion? Okay. All those in favor of Christina Marshall for the WCCP?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. I vote aye as well. Congratulations. Thank you both
Thank you very
for
much
stepping
for
up.
coming in, both of you.
Thanks for sitting through that part of our meeting. All right. Thank you. Next, we'll discuss 160 Forest Street. And Jay, if you could come to the table. Getting hotter in here. And
It's cozy.
don't let Mike make you a basketball coach, okay? So like run now, Mark. Is there anybody in the audience who wants to give public comment on 160 Forest at this time? Okay. So in our packets, Jay, you have a draft of a covenant affordable housing restriction.
Yeah, it's a regulatory agreement, but it serves as a restriction pursuant to the applicable state programs.
And I know a few weeks back, we had two different items on 160 Forest. We were looking to have the Arlington Housing hold this restriction. So is that what this document would guide and govern?
Either that entity or any other entity. This is the form that the state asked me to build up using some existing kind of forms. It's a unique, slightly unique situation because we don't know yet what the end user is. Normally we convey a restriction or we accept a restriction. Here we're conveying one. And so we're in the shoes of a developer, but then we're passing on the responsibilities to someone else. It's a little complicated, but yeah.
Okay. And I think the other thing that we talked about 2 weeks ago, and Marty Jones was here, there was asking the Affordable Housing Trust to do some work on community meetings and rental opportunities, ownership opportunities, development opportunities. And I'm not sure how much of that flexibility of the process is reflected in the document, because we haven't quite done the work on disposition and design and number of units. And I'm just curious how the work that the Housing Trust is offering to do for us, how that has been considered in this or will be reflected.
It has been because the agreement, it kind of sits on a parallel track with all of the other work to develop RFPs and design plans and strategies for either conveyance or development of the property. But it's flexible enough to allow either a rental or home ownership, and that was the challenge. It also provides different options as to whether it's the Housing Corp of Arlington or another entity, that when we get to that
third party that will develop it or own it and reside in it, and then the responsibilities can come back to the town so that we would be managing it. And the state went one step further and even said, you should take on some of those responsibilities now, kind of limit the workload for a housing corp of Arlington or some other entity, allow them to enforce and monitor, but still allow the town and its various affordable housing entities take the laboring oar in terms of marketing, locating entities, developing a strategy for either rehabbing or developing anew this property. So all that, we kept that flexibility that was important in my drafting.
Okay. I have a few more questions, but I'm going to stop. And maybe, Jay, I don't know if you have more you want to say or if we just want to...
No, I mean, this is a significant part of it because the finalization, and I'm waiting to hear back from EOHLC on this. They've had a busy couple weeks, as we all know, with Milton as well as ADU regs. There's new 40B regs. So they've been a busy entity, and I've been kind of bugging them about this because we're very close to finalizing it. Once that's done, it then feeds into satisfying all the requirements of Mass Health as well as the estate, because getting this finalized is the last step in that particular process.
Okay.
The processes.
Other feedback?
Thank you, Jay. I know that we've been kind of building the plane as we're flying it with this project, and so there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen for something that is small and dealing with the state, and they've actually been responsive to us.
More than I thought they were going to be.
Likewise.
I've been really pleased. You know, I was able to kind of reach out and tap someone who I thought would be responsive. Not exactly that person's particular role, but they were great in connecting me with the right folks over at the agency.
Yeah, we appreciate your work on this. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go with my questions then. That's fine. A couple things just in reading it, and I certainly got a little bit lost, but who do we understand to be the project sponsor?
That would be the third party, the Housing Corp of Arlington. It's flipped. Normally, the project sponsor would be kind of the developer side, and we would be holding the restriction. So we had to flip those two roles.
Okay.
So that would be the entity. I was going to rename it, and I could, but it was just, I decided to keep the nomenclature that the state is comfortable with.
Okay.
And that parties understand.
One thing you mentioned, that rehabilitation of the unit versus demolishing the unit, uniformity of the units that are built there. It wasn't so clear that the rehabilitation of the existing structure was clearly allowed here. It seemed to be more demolish and build something that looks uniform. And I'm wondering where that flexibility exists in.
I could include something like that in a whereas, but this agreement is not designed to set out what will actually be done on the property, on whether it be rehabbed or built anew.
What agreement will guide that?
That would
the
probably
RFP process?
ultimately be through the RFP process and a development agreement or an LDA or something else. It'll be smaller than our traditional LDAs, but that's the process that would guide that. And this document is intended to cover any possibility, whatever ends up on that site from an affordable housing perspective, rental, 1 unit, 2 unit, whatever it may be. This document is intended to provide the restriction that provides perpetual affordability.
So it could be me not reading it, which is why when the lawyers don't have comments, I'm like, then I know I'm probably out of my league. But
no, but it's a good point. And I tried to
because my next one, you're going to be like, yeah, it's right there, Michelle, on page 2.
To capture some in the whereas clauses, not strictly legal terms, but what may happen, and I think that that's a fair point. So I'm certainly happy to build
to that end, I think, and maybe it's that uniformity piece that it also doesn't appear a single home and an ADU is possible, but what you're saying is, whatever could fit, whatever works, whatever the neighborhood may want to do. maybe because ADUs are part of, now ADUs by right, and this is also affordable housing that we've acquired, been given the property for, maybe having, such as ADU, such as multifamily, such as this, and this might be good to list out, because it's absent, and yet we're hearing a lot about it in the state.
My thought it would be that we get into that kind of more granular approach in the RFP process. I wouldn't want to, in this agreement, forecast what may be allowable or not allowable, or the processes or zoning bylaws that may apply. It's entirely possible that this ends up being something that we take out of traditional zoning and put into 40B, for example, just to make sure we get the right kind of relief. So I'd be a little reluctant to get too deep into that, while noting still maybe cast a broad net in a whereas clause or something like that, that this is destined for an RFP process where various possibilities will be considered under applicable zoning, whether it be rehabilitation, development, or something like that.
Okay. And then when the RFP is issued, does that then become, it just rides along with this restriction?
We will make sure that this is going to be a component. Whoever is looking at it is going to see this document.
Okay.
And maybe even an additional document that would be the next step when the restriction comes back to us. But this will definitely be part of that mix, for sure.
So I know we're a little early to end the process to, the point of the housing trust. I just want to make sure that because something isn't contemplated in this agreement, this restriction of, affordable housing use, if it's not contemplated here, I wouldn't want that to tie our hands in the RFP or become a point of contention or even a negotiating tactic with a developer down the line. I don't have to build that. This restriction doesn't say it. I can't build that. It's not called out, or I have to build something else. I would just want to make sure we give ourselves ultimate flexibility for an RFP that we issue based on all the good work the Affordable Housing Trust is going to do, that we don't run into conflict with what this contemplates and includes or doesn't.
Yeah, I don't see that in this form, and most developers of affordable housing are going to notice recognize about 9/10 of the paragraphs in here. It is like
that'd be
combination.
8 more than me.
It's a combination of at least 3 different kinds of affordable housing restrictions that I had to build into one to cover any possibility that we may encounter, but none of it is reinventing the wheel. It's just combining it in different processes. For rental, there's a number of sections, for example, on rental and what happens when someone's over income.
Yep.
All that stuff for someone that develops affordable housing is going to seem like old hat.
Okay. Those were my questions. I only had 3. So next steps?
Next steps, circle back. I went at the Connect 351. I was able to kind of buttonhole a few folks over at EOHLC. They're busy. They released actually at the MMA show the new ADU regs. They got yelled at a lot over that. So I was just trying to get their attention on this. So I'll reconnect with them this week.
Okay.
And then ultimately the board will vote on this document. Yeah.
Yes, the board, the end user, want to make sure that the estate as well as Mass Health is comfortable with it. Mass Health has asked a lot of questions, wanted to make sure they're in the kind of the feedback loop a little bit with EOHLC. So,
okay.
But like Mike said, there's some cooks in the kitchen here. So,
okay. Anything else? Anything from? No. Affordable Housing Trust.
Jay's done a great job at sort of mashing this together because it is very unusual to have all of this flexibility and then maybe it will be this, maybe it will be that, but it is based on all the existing kind of EU restrictions. So.
Great. Okay.
right.
Thank you.
Excellent.
And I can send this feedback if you want to. Send you 2 bullets. It's really not much.
That'd be helpful because it'll be a kind of a tickler for me in the morning to add that clause and get it back to EOHLC as an update.
Okay.
So, all right.
Will do. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you, Shane.
Okay, next up, I know we see them here, so we wanted to hear from Friends of Wedge Pond. I think we have some updates on water and moving forward, so if you'd like to come up, however many of you are here, and Mr. Gordon and Mr. Band, and I don't know if Mr. Miller wants to join us, but there's seats at the table if you wish.
Should I just be up here on my own?
They're just making you do this by yourself, Matt.
Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. I think I've met most of you, but I'm Matt Gordon. I live at 26 Vine Street on Wedge Pond, right next to the Congregational Church. Moved to town in 2010, and I am the president of the Friends of Wedge Pond. The Friends of Wedge Pond we initially were founded in 2022, but earlier this year, we officially became a 501c3 nonprofit, and our mission is the care, conservation, advocation of Wedge Pond, including the quality of the water, helping to maintain and improve the two town parks. That includes Beauregard, as well as Elliott Park. We hope the pond and its parks can continue to be a place for various types of outdoor recreation for all Winchester residents. The Friends of Wedge Pond, we have over 70 members, including Wedge Pond abutters. I'll stop here and say, some of the folks here are all, we've got Randy, we've got Janice, we've got Andy, who, all are members of the Friends of Wedge Pond and live on the pond. So why am I here? Besides to educate you a little bit about the Friends of Wedge Pond. So we are, proposing to work in partnership with the town and donate $9,000 that our group has raised to expand the scope of the town's existing annual invasive algae treatments and testing program to now include additional controls and tests for other invasive aquatic plants, specifically lakeweed and excessive lily pads. So if you see Wedge Pond, especially late in the summer, you can see the lily pads, especially in the shallower side by Stop and Shop, have really grown exponentially. But what you probably can't see, but I know because I sail my sunfish on the pond, and I really can't turn the corner anymore because of the lakeweed. It's so thick that my dagger board will get caught in it. So let's see. So what have been some of the accomplishments of the group so far? We've supported the Average Owner Cleanup Day for the past 3 springs, having large groups of volunteers do trash pickup and remove invasive plants along the Average Owner Rivershed. The past 2 years, under the leadership of Bill Band and the Conservation Commission, we've supported their initiative focused on the restoration of town-owned shoreline and waters of Wedge Pond. This has included the shoreline of Elliott Park, the Winchester Housing Authority, and Beauregard, which I'll rename Park. We're not looking for it to be a beach anymore, but we would like to, we'll talk about that briefly later, still be used as a park. We contributed 260 hours of volunteer work in 2023, and I know it was an even larger number than that in 2024. We've also historically advised the town on the need for appropriate annual water treatments for the pond from the abutters' perspective. That was in the past, working with Winrec, who was managing it, to make sure the timing and frequency of the algae treatments were meeting the need. So I did want to say, as I said, a partnership with the town. So I wanted to thank Beth and her teams, the DPW and Winrec. Also, as I've already mentioned, the Conservation Commission, which 2 members are here. We've spent a lot of time with them. A third Conservation Commissioner, Ann Storer, has been a fantastic partner to us. So as both, also as the head of the Friends of Winter Pond, and we've also and Andy, who's here, has worked quite a bit with the new Friends of Winrec as well, focusing on Beauregard Park, as I'll call it, once again, on how to potentially reopen that as usable space for the town. So the last things I will say is that, besides giving money to then to do additional water treatments for the quality of the water, some other ideas that we have. We'd love to hold a fundraiser at Beauregard Park. We'd call it Wedgetoberfest. We do it in October. We don't need the bathhouse. We'd close that off. We just need the beach area, and we think we could have an excellent, music, beer. We'd get the liquor license, insurance, and we think we could raise a lot of money. So we'd love to do that. And correlated to that, we'd love to open up Beauregard as a park, usable by town residents, including repairing and even adding to the current playground equipment that's there. One idea that may be future for CPA funding we'll throw out there is aeration for Wedge Pond. So that's the type of thing where it could be kind of a capital expenditure, and that might even help with reducing the need for algae treatments down the road. So with that said, we invite the members of the Select Board to come visit in the spring to revitalize public space, especially Elliott Park is looking much, much nicer, with clearing out the invasive, plant life there. And I'll stop talking and I can answer any questions you guys have. Thank you.
Thank you. I know that we'll get a donation, and obviously we'll add it to our acceptance of donations in some future meeting, maybe in the next meeting or two.
Yes, so we can cut the check whenever. I just wasn't sure of the exact process.
Yep, and I think you're working with Patty on that, and then it'll get onto our agenda. But you don't need to come back. We'll just acknowledge it as part of our kind of opening orders of business. I know you had a fundraiser in the spring-ish, or no, in the fall, because I think Mr. Miller invited the entire select board to that. So, good for you. It seems like you had good turnout. And thanks for including us.
Yes.
I know I didn't go, but we appreciate knowing about it. And it sounds like
you should come to our next one. Andy even built a pontoon boat. So,
I don't know. Does anybody have any questions? It sounds like great stuff. But any questions for Mr. Gordon?
I just want to say thank you, Matt, and the Friends of Wedge Pond. This is a chronic issue that is not getting better on its own, and a lot of it is structural with water coming down from the Aberjona and not being able to make that turn around the corner and silt kind of backing up and the algae forming with the standing water. And so that's a major project for the town that will be probably in the millions for us to resolve, and it will help us to, I think, put that on our agenda in the future to evaluate. So, these donations will taper off over a period of time, and certainly also excited to hear about the idea to make better use of Beauregard Beach. It's a great natural resource for the community, and has fallen off in maintenance over the years, and but has prior to that has been really a great meeting ground for people of all ages. So I'm glad that you guys have that idea, and hopefully will help us focus some funds from the CPA to support it. So thank you, appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
To say,
please.
Yeah, no, this is a great update, and actually I appreciate how descriptive you were without use of slides. I can imagine how much algae is there, because you can't take the boat around the corner. To what Mike said about Beauregard, could you just give us some, what's the thinking of how to, sort of revitalize and reframe that as a park? And
I mean, I'll tell you, as we worked as a group, and my thought is always pragmatically to figure out, what are some easy solutions that you can, because I know there's expensive solutions that you could do, but I mean, first of all, I'd love to find ways to even just take down the fence, because now we could put a low fence close to the water, because if you compare Beauregard to Elliott Park, one is locked off with a barbed wire fence and the other isn't, and so we'd love to to take the fence down. Like I said, the playground equipment that's there is actually workable. I think if you just added a couple more pieces, I think that families would go and use it. So we'd love to partner with, and we have had some conversations. I know it gets a little bit more complicated with the DPW and with the friends of. I always have to remember the different friend groups of WinRec, as far as if there's a way to reopen the bathhouse, because I know that would help. But I realize if that piece is more complicated, then let's just keep that closed in the meantime. Lock it off, but we can still use the park space. We've been cleaning out, Bill has done a great job leading this for us, but we've tried to provide him a lot of sweat, labor to support it, to clearing out the invasive plant life, on the shoreline. So it's really just opening it up, playground equipment, potentially to start, and making it available as a park.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I make a comment by one of the friends.
Sure, come on up.
Yeah,
I'm
please.
Randy Blackshopper, and I live at 666 Main Street, which is right next to the Main Street Bridge across from the Stop and Shop. And I get to watch people launching boats from right next to the bridge in Elliott Park, and they go over the fence, and they break the fence. And there's a lot of disruption of the fence over there, but that's where people launch boats onto the pond to go fishing. And Beauregard Beach would be a much nicer place to have a boat launch and to let people officially launch boats there instead of trying to bring them in from Main Street.
I totally, in fact, I know one of the assistants from Winrec used to launch his boat, from Beauregard Beach, because he had a key, So.
Yes, right. Nobody else had a
Here's the
but yeah.
secret.
Anyway.
So no, I mean, I'm glad you brought up, because I think Beauregard would be a great place to launch. I know there also is another small access point on Wedge Pond Road, and honestly, I'm a proponent, even though I live on the pond, I want to do whatever is going to get more people using the pond, is my personal, and from what I've talked with the other members of the Friends of Wedge Pond, that's the general groups in part of our mission statement. We're not just trying to keep it to ourselves. We really want to, and the fact that there are 2 town parks, even figuring out, well, how can we get people to use those parks more? So, thank you, Randy.
All right, thank you. Anything else? Okay, well, we appreciate the update. Thank you for all the good work going on, and we'll look forward to that donation. Thank you. All right, so now we're going to jump to the town manager's report, which we skipped over at the top of the
Quick
meeting.
question, Michelle. So, in the past, we've voted to move forward donations and accepting them without having something physical, right? And so, I don't know that we can do that tonight and save the trouble. I mean, sometimes checks drag anyways and can come later, but we certainly don't typically require people when we vote to accept a donation to have actual funds. People don't come up with cash, and lay it down on the table. So I don't know if this is a new rule, but any time that we take an action to accept a donation, sometimes it doesn't ever come, right? Sometimes there's changes of plans and things like that, but I think it's something that we should do to show our appreciation to accept the donation from them, and it is generous and certainly helps resolve a problem that the town otherwise would be resolving. So,
Okay.
So then what? Would Mike?
Sure,
See if this
yeah.
works.
So
No, I moved it with no.
No, you go, please.
This was a requirement from Stacy.
It was required from her?
Yeah.
This was an ask from Stacy.
Believe
So,
that.
like all of the monies that came from the basketball court, we had to receive with the letter first before we could accept it. So this is just something that Stacy had.
Okay, that's what I was asking, if this is a new procedure that we're doing.
Yeah,
I mean,
and actually, for the past few years, all of the monies have been in hand before it's gone onto the agenda. So that's pretty much what.
Okay.
We do this.
You can still acknowledge it. We can still accept it in anticipation that it's coming, and we can still acknowledge it later. But however you'd like to, they're here. We're grateful, and we can put a motion out there.
Proclamation, sir.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that, move that we accept the donation and show our appreciation for their engagement and support of Wedge Pond, and then we look forward to receiving the funds at a later date. Was that all right? I don't know.
Sounds good.
Okay.
I'd second that.
All right.
Better.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm confused, so I'm just going to abstain. If Stacy wants a letter, I mean, I didn't even hear what the funds were being accepted for, so.
Water treatment.
Water treatment.
Algae treatment of the water.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't want to make Stacy angry.
pending receipt of the check, so thank you.
Well, when Stacy's on vacation, this is what we do.
She is on vacation this week. She'll have to watch later.
I'm sure she is.
She's tuned in right now.
Oh, I hope not. Okay, now let's go to the town manager's report. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for your patience.
I have a few staff appointments before I get started. So first up, in accordance with Section 4-2B of the Town Charter, I've made the following regular full-time permanent promotional appointment in the Department of Public Works of Givens Jean-Baptiste to school head custodian, and I request that the board vote to waive the 15-day appointment period.
I move that we waive the 15-day waiting period for Givens John Baptiste for the DPW Schools Head Custodian.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Next up, in accordance with Section 4-2B of the Town Charter, I've made the following regular full-time appointments in the Department of Public Works of Joseph Acello of Somerville, a school custodian, and John Holland of Winchester of school custodian. And I requested the board vote to waive the 15-day appointment period.
I move that we waive the 15-day waiting period for Joseph Osceola and Jonathan Holland for school custodians.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And finally, in accordance with Section 4-2B of the Town Charter, I've made the following regular full-time permanent promotional appointment in the Department of Public Works to Stephen Cannon of Woburn to building head custodian. He will be our new custodian here at Town Hall. Our previous custodian has retired after many years of service to the town, so appreciate his service. And I respectfully request that the board vote to waive the 15-day appointment period.
Move that we waive the 15-day waiting period for Stephen Cannon, building head custodian.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you. Just a few other quick updates. First up, the nomination process is still open for those who are interested in applying for public office for the annual election that will be held on March 22nd. The last day to obtain nomination papers is just a few days away, January 29th, and then candidates must submit those nomination papers back to the town clerk's office on January 31st. The town clerk is also very busy with our transfer station permit sales as well as dog licenses. You can do those either online or in person at the town clerk's office. Also, please return your census if you should have gotten that in the mail recently. And then a few other updates. First, grant that we were happy to receive. Our engineering department applied for what's called the bottleneck reduction program grant, and we did receive that to evaluate the Skillings Road corridor, Washington Street at Mystic Valley Parkway intersection, and Mystic Valley Parkway at Highland Avenue as well. So that work will be ongoing over the next few months.
How bad is that intersection? Like, do you have an idea of how often we have traffic incidents there?
I think there's fewer incidents because the delays are so long. But certainly coming down South Border Road, Highland Ave backs up pretty significantly.
Oh, yeah.
That is a DCR intersection. It's not a town-controlled intersection. So hopefully with Mass DOT being involved, there'll be some movement to make some improvements in that area.
What?
Yeah.
Yep. And my question is that the full of that intersection? So it's all five
legs.
Streets. Yeah. No,
Yep.
we know it well at
Yeah.
8:30 in the morning.
Yes, it's a challenge.
Very challenging.
Next update, FEMA has updated the flood insurance rate maps for Middlesex County, which includes the town of Winchester. The effective dates for the revised maps will be July 8th of 2025. The last firm update was done in 2014. These new revised maps are not based on new hydraulic study, but they're just based on upgrades to the topographic data that was collected over the past few years. So included in the packet is an update from town engineer Matt Schuman that has a little bit more information, as well as the letter that we got from FEMA. And the planning board is planning to bring an article to Springtown meeting to update the floodplain bylaw to reflect the new effective map date, which is something we have to do to be in compliance under the National Flood Insurance Program. On the consent agenda tonight, you have a copy.
Before we move on,
Yeah.
how can residents find out if they're no longer in a high hazard area or they are in a high hazard area? Is this something they can self-serve or? How
Yeah, so there's information in the memo that was included in the packet. There's information available on the FEMA's website that shows the flood maps. This is not a wholesale reanalysis. So back in 2010, we went from the maps that were in place in 1980 to these new maps that went in place in 2010, and hundreds of people were remapped into the floodplain. This is just adjustments based on new topographic information. So it won't be the same level of changes that we saw before. It's likely that if you have flood insurance today, you'll probably have to have flood insurance going forward.
Then when the flood mitigation project's done, then will we ask to be remapped?
Right. So the town of Winchester will, there's a process with FEMA where once we're complete with all the projects, we'll go through a full remapping process. We have to do the analysis and we submit that data to FEMA, and there'll be another. It won't be a full Middlesex County reissue,
Right.
but for the town of Winchester.
Great, thank you.
Yep. Included in the packet is, in the consent agenda, is a proposed letter of support. As we are all aware, Civico has an agreement with the town and has a permit through the planning board for redevelopment of the Waterfield lot, and they are in the process of applying to the EOHLC for their tax credit funding. They may recall that they submitted in the first round of funding last year and were denied the first round, but have been invited to reapply this year. So they've asked us to submit a letter of support to that grant. So if everybody's okay with that, a copy of it is on the consent agenda for approval. They expect to receive notice of the funding award by early 2025, and if that moves forward, they could be ready to start construction as early as late 2025 or early 2026. And then finally, hard to believe that we're talking about it, but we did lay out the schedule for Springtown meeting. So the warrant for Springtown meeting closes on Friday, March 14th, and motions and backgrounds will be due to the town manager's office 2 weeks after that on March 28th. And then the idea would be that the board would vote on the Springtown meeting warrant on April 7th. And the first night of town meeting is Monday, April 28th. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
That's coming up fast.
It's not far away.
Okay. Any other questions for Beth on the report? All right. Next up, I know, Beth, you sent out some updated slides. So the next conversation we're going to have is the budget. You all also, in the packet, got an update from school committee on their proposed changes to timing. Beth will be receiving a school committee budget at the end of the week, and Beth's budget is due February 15th. So, and as much as we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, if there are targets that we want to agree on, some of the changes to try to close the deficit as it currently exists, I wanted to give Beth the floor and then see where if we can coalesce around a number or a growth target or a deficit target, whichever way you want to look at the glass, half full or half empty. But I think that's what we're trying to get to tonight. And Beth, whatever more you'd like to add. Hello, Patty.
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
So Beth, while we wait, can you take us through the complications presented by the school committee's proposed timing for have presented their budget numbers and how that trickles down and what that means?
It's Patty calling. It's Patty calling. It's that computer.
No.
It's got it.
Yeah, so the timeline for the town budget is laid out both in the charter and in the bylaw.
Yes.
Town manager budget is due February 15th, and then it gets turned over to the finance committee, and ultimately it's the finance committee who brings the budget forward to town meeting.
Welcome to do Thank you.
So there's no specific date outlined in the charter for the school committee to provide their budget.
Right.
It's just kind of in the time for the town manager to be able to put their budget together. Historically, it's been somewhere around the end of January that the school committees voted on their budget. It's very common that between the time that the school committee votes their budget, between the town manager submits their budget, and we get to town meeting, there's lots of changes that happen, right? There's information that we just don't know that's in a preliminary manner, right? At February 15th, for example, my budget will include, and has always includes the governor's budget state aid numbers, right? Which will change before we get till May 1st town meeting. And so I think the difference, I think, and perhaps this is just kind of a conversation that should be had between everybody in terms of what the intent is with the schedule as laid out by the school committee, because I think the way it's laid out, you know, in the memo we received from the school committee was that the level service budget would be voted at the end of January, and then there'd be some community engagement between then and March 15th, where their I think the term was used in the letter, was recommended budget was proposed. And I think, as I said, there's always some changes in the school budget as we go through the FinCom review, because there's pieces of the puzzle that are coming together in a clearer manner. I think the concern I would have is if there's significant new initiatives that are being added that would add significant additional costs between that February 15th timeline and that March 15th timeline. I don't want to speak to the timing concerns that the finance committee on their own might have in terms of that budget process, but for me, it's more about being able, you know, as professional staff, to be able to come to you and give some projections on where we're headed, right? Which allows us to make decisions about other portions of the budget. And if there's significant growth between that, you know, end of January time and the March 15th time, that changes the planning outlook, right? For that, not just for the next fiscal year, but for that 3-year horizon that we typically look at. So I think that's just my concern in terms of kind of how that all plays together. And I'm sure Finance Committee would add their own kind of thoughts on the timing of it.
Yeah, I think everybody wants more time, but we're constrained by when we have to have town meeting and everything else. I had the same questions as you, John, because not only does the school have to give Beth their budget by, you know, time for her to do her work, they have to notice it and present it a week before they even vote on it. So they have to have their budget done by mid-January, when there are so many unknowns.
Right.
It just seems like is there a better process? I don't know. This might be one of the situations where this is really the best we have to work with, but I'm glad that you're also thinking about if there's somewhere we can...
Yeah. You know, I understand the school's issues. But I'm like,
yeah,
who's going to solve the end? And I know FinCom doesn't want to use free cash, but...
And who likes doing work on something where the numbers can change drastically from week to week? Mm-hmm. So, you know, I guess just chalk this up to another, you know, bylaw or policy that we might want to think about making better for ourselves.
Did you print out a copy of it?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, I'll just say, I mean, I support us evaluating this process starting earlier and having it be more collaborative. I think reduces risk of that surprise. So I haven't seen the schools ever since I've been here just come out of nowhere with a programmatic change. They are pretty transparent about what they're going to be doing with their budget, and you know, I think they go through great pains to manage some of the natural expenses that come out of not just special education requirements, but also contract requirements. So we've been seeing a lot more pressure on the bargaining units, especially in the school side. So I think the better numbers that we have, the more we're able to plan collaboratively with them. And I think the town manager and the superintendent should be really doing the bulk of this. So I mean, the school budget is the biggest part of our budget, of course, and it's not. It's helpful for us to have to look over a long period of time and to say where the averages are and look where we're above, where we're below, what is impacting that. But it's really counterproductive for us to arbitrarily start budgeting with a number that is not tethered to anything in reality, right? So when you see the slides that are coming up, we had a lower number that didn't come from the superintendent. And so on the town side, we added a bunch of positions and more investment. And it looks like we have to now take things away, even though that was never reality, right? So it's really a waste of our time to be creating a budget around false percentages and false numbers. And so I'm hoping that a more intentional process, something like what's presented here by the schools, will help us come together and have better planning and long-term strategy. I mean, I don't see us, it looks to me like we're on a collision course for a general override next year. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to tell where we are with reversions following the year and other expenses, but and I think that's the opportunity for us to look at program improvements, adding on the town side and the school side. And at this point, where we're seeing pressure with healthcare and we're seeing pressure with special education, that we should just maintain status quo and fund what our existing commitments are, and look to add things as part of the next budget. So.
But in fairness to Beth, in the municipal side, you've got the municipal side has to run on its own, and they have needs, and because the school department has maybe bigger needs, that doesn't obliterate everything that goes on the municipal side, because you have to keep moving forward on that side too.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like, I know what your point was. Like,
there are
positions
obligations.
The positions that we're removing, they weren't there to begin with, right? So I get that.
Yeah.
But I just think that still Beth has to plan what she needs on the municipal side, regardless of what the school department comes back with, right? And then they meet in the middle. I don't think we can wait until the school department comes up with their budget on March 15th.
I think we can't, right? I mean, I think Beth has to do, she has to publish something on the 15th, and then we are out of that process. It's in FinCom's hands. They don't interview us. I mean, maybe they should, but like, oh, what do you think about Beth wanted to have an additional custodian or had an additional health person and she cut it out? Do you think it should go back in? And this is our chance to say to Beth, leave it out or put it in. But at that point, it's in the hands of the Finance Committee, and then it goes to the town meeting, and we can all vote on that as town meeting members. But I think the conversations that school committee will have with the public, we're not having, but I'm not sure there's a person out there advocating for another janitor, the same way they might be advocating for another classroom aide. So
no, I mean,
we have to
certainly
go with what we have.
We identify what we need in the future, and when we're going to be able to do that. And as we get closer to an override, we have less options. And so my request would just be pick up the phone and call the superintendent and say, we're building an entire budget and adding staff based on this number that we pulled out of the sky. Are we close? And if it's
not a number we pulled out of the sky. It's based on a 10-year historical average. The 4.92. We do all of our budget modeling based on 10-year historical averages. So I just want to clarify that point.
Yes, but I mean, it's not tethered to the actual existing school budget and what their needs are, right? So it's helpful for us when we look and we see over 10 years, here's where we've gone up and here we go. It's helpful for us planning, but I don't think it's helpful for establishing a budget because it's not a real number. So that's my only request. I think if we start earlier and we're working with the schools more closely, we'll see what their exposure is, in the budget process, and I think we would see how hard they are working to keep costs down, and that is what I see. And I'm hoping that we can actually do some invest in some programmatic improvements for the schools in the next override. But I don't think that this year is the one to do it. I think they're sensitive to that. I think that's why they haven't proposed any.
Yeah, Mike, to be clear, no one here has inferred that the school committee and the school department aren't doing the best to minimize their manage their expenses wisely. So I'm stop that.
No. I'm saying for the purpose, John, of when we look at the slides and you say, here's the number, and here's the increased number for the schools. Now we have to cut all these things that we talked about before. That's not actually reality.
We're not
right?
scapegoating the schools. Can I just ask Michelle a question?
Yeah, then I want to give Anthony a chance
No,
to speak too.
Michelle, is this a better process this year for and maybe this can be the process going forward for the schools to, Frank referred to it as like the maintenance budget, and then you've got the additions for program, it could be, literacy or whatever the initiatives are, come in that second tranche of budgeting? Is that how does that work better for you guys?
So,
Can I come up to the table?
Come on up.
Yeah.
I just think it's helpful to give us context.
Yeah, I think level services is the term they use for.
Frank used maintenance, but it could be level service, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
MOE.
this is what I get when I stick around to listen.
I figured you knew what you were doing. This is on the agenda, so I figured you had a reason.
So, John, the level services budget is essentially what we need and what we know we need at this point in the year to open schools and run them so that everybody else can hear too. Open schools and run them for the next year. So, and the truth of the matter is, by January 31st, that's pretty much what we've always known. So, so we're not sort of changing our process as much as articulating it further and making it clear to everyone what process is that has always sort of overlaid and existed, but we've never been really explicit about how that works for us sort of on the inside.
Yep.
And the other part that we're doing is we're being way more intentional now about getting community feedback, staff feedback on that level services budget, because what we've been unable to do in the way the process has existed before is not really engage some of our biggest stakeholders in that process. So really the memo that you received from school committee is to actually help all of us get on the same page and be talking about the same things at the same time.
Great.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah,
Okay.
makes sense. Thank you.
I'm going to go back there. But
Don't go far, probably. Go ahead.
And I happened to be at the school committee's budget hearing last week, and I appreciate, as I'm looking at the memo that Michelle carefully put together for us, I appreciate that the sort of the budget, the public hearing included that there's been attention to staffing, and there's been attention to what the different, the staff survey and what the staff need, and sort of what are those priorities. And, looking at the schedule, that's November and December. We had the budget summit December 10th. In defense of Beth's budget, the school committee at that point is coming in and having a number for the maintenance of effort budget, but their school year starts in September. So we're asking them, 3 months into the year, what best you can give us for budget. I don't think that proposing a budget on January 10th from the town manager, from the municipal side of the budget and the municipal side of the scope of services, I don't think that any of us necessarily are looking at this. And I know there was conversation in the meeting, framing the way we look at those 10-year sort of expectations of the school budget. I think we're looking at the budget and how we all have to sort of negotiate of what's going to happen moving forward. It seems only recently that we've really put attention into where can we have some redundancy in staffing, and where can we be prepared for retirements or IT services or things like that, and so sort of being able to sort of get ahead of that with what we want to see, and then being sort of dialed back as we get more information. I don't think that was an inappropriate move, and I don't think the timing as it purports to this timeline from the school committee, I don't think that's in conflict with what we've been doing. We have a budget summit. We're not saying everyone's budget numbers need to be in by January 10th and nailed down. That's what
So the charter does
February
say-
15th is.
The charter says school committee votes a budget by January 30th to go into the town manager's budget. So what we know and what we don't know on January 10th, January 30th is what it is. So that, that is unchanged. And February 15th is unchanged. And town meeting is also unchanged. Last Monday in April, first Monday in May can take up the budget. So the longer we don't know things, obviously the day after Beth publishes the town manager's budget, it becomes just a budget. Not that it becomes irrelevant, but it becomes a moving target. So we heard a lot last year at Springtown meeting that the town manager handed us a budget with a $1.4 million deficit. Do we really want to have the town manager hand Finance Committee a budget with a $2.8 million deficit? I say no. But, so the town manager's gone through and looked at revenues. I think school committee, there's, $330,000 in increase per pupil expenditures, which is in House 1, that may or may not make it through with the Senate. There's $420 million in Chapter 70 school aid that came out from the governor's budget last week. There's baked in that 5.8% is an anticipated contract settlement that we don't know what it is. There might be room to say, hey, we could negotiate differently. We don't even know what that contract is. So if we're trying to get that number down from 2.9 million that we're at right now as a deficit, I think we need to make some assumptions that are, 2.908. We should assume that there's potentially some additional retirements, potentially there's a contract settlement that is not going to be perhaps as rich as whatever school committee is carrying, which they don't have to tell us. That's up to them. Maybe there's some just attrition within personnel, but if within all those changes and some additional local aid, if there's $300,000 or $500,000 in good news or staff changes, and that gets our deficit down closer to $2 million, and we know that about $1.5 million might be reversions in free cash, I think that shows some discipline on our side. It leaves open school committee's votes in March and where they land, and it leaves open the entire FinCom process from February 15th to, night whatever of Springtown meeting. It could be night 3. But I think for us to not just not grow the municipal side as Beth's already proposed, but I think to actually reduce the school committee ask with the anticipation that there might be some good news coming down the line, I think we got to come in a little bit lower than what they've asked for.
Okay. I strongly disagree.
Okay.
I do not think a level services budget for the schools is good enough. I think we need to give the schools more leeway, give the schools more opportunity, because just operating at level services is not keeping our schools where they need to be. It has this title of level services, but it's really not. It's stagnation. And we have problems in our schools that need to be fixed. And the longer we ignore them, the longer we do not give them the necessary funding, the more expensive it's going to be to fix those problems, and the more repercussions it's going to have across many, many years of kids' educations in this town. I mean, the big obvious one is the literacy curriculum now. And I'm just really not willing to say the schools deserve anything less than what they're saying they need for the level services.
But Bill, what if in that level services number, Michelle, please don't panic, and for people watching at home, I'm about to make up a number.
Yeah.
What if in that number that they've asked for, that they say they need, is $1.2 million in unsettled contract dollars? They don't need it, do they? They don't even have the cost yet.
But that sounds like
so why would we budget for something that hasn't even been executed? There's a portion of that number, which is keeping the lights on at today's salaries costs X. Keeping the lights on at today's salaries plus what we negotiate is Y. We're asking to give known and unknown. I don't see why we should. They will negotiate a budget. They will know something in March. They might not negotiate and settle until the spring or the summer, and we're going to fall town meeting to fund that contract, the way we fund a bunch of contracts, police contracts and other personnel items. So why wouldn't we at least take back the unsettled contracts for the hundreds of union folks until we know? And if school committee settles this bargaining unit and that bargaining unit between now and Springtown meeting, it goes back in. But there's a number in there of some magnitude, I don't know, that really, I don't think you could argue is needed. It's anticipated, it's planned for with negotiations just beginning. I mean, we used to handle an allocated wage reserve in a certain way to put stuff aside, but I don't see that as a cut. I see that as keep the lights on, there's the salaries you have today, and that has a number. The salaries you need in November are also in this number that they've given us, but we don't know what that number is. So level services isn't really level services. It's keeping the lights on with an unknown cost of living adjustment that they won't tell us because it's a negotiating, and I respect that. But we're being asked to hold money and build around a deficit that not a single bargaining unit has said, we want 2%, we want 10%. That's what I struggle with.
Yeah.
And it's not an insignificant number
No.
of that $70 million. It's not an insignificant number.
It's not at all. But this is the flaw in our budgeting process. I mean, that is an unknown, but it's something that we're going to have to pay.
At
And if
some
we-
point, yeah.
Yes, at some point. But every year we over budget and provide departments with more money than they end up actually needing, and we have the reversions that we have.
We don't have reversions from schools.
Because we've been underfunding them for years.
But to say we build our budgets with overages, that doesn't happen. That money doesn't come back.
Well, it doesn't surprise me because I think our schools need more money.
I think it, I mean, I don't want to get too much into the details of this, but I think pushing it off puts us in a worse bargaining position when we're going into contract negotiations for multi-year contracts. That's all I'll say. So, I mean, I appreciate your reasoning, Michelle. I think you're right, but I think the other factors that I consider are where we want to be, and we have been managing a lot of growth on the school side, even with the level service budget, right? So that's what's difficult, and really, and I know Michelle worked on both the Special Education Reserve Fund and the Health Care Stabilization Fund as well that we put at the town meeting. And that was because in 2018 we were in the same place we're in now. We're at the tail end, running on fumes a little bit.
Yep.
And we knew that if we got a high school number because of special education and a high healthcare number, then we would be in trouble. And we needed to, when things are going well, set aside some of that money. So that's, I feel like, where we are now, right? We're going to probably be looking to draw on both of those funds if we can in order to use less free cash and ultimately maintain level services, which I think we certainly should do on the town side. But I appreciate Bill's comments.
I think, and I think Dr. Hackett said this when we were at the budget summit, this does tend to be, because it's their earliest budget and it's coming in 4 months into the school year, that by the time often that it's at town meeting and by the time it gets closer to the end of the year, there is better knowledge to contracts, to things. There's better knowledge of how those dollars are available and what can sort of be used for those things that, literacy that we talk about, math that came up at the last minute. I'm not remembering from the slides that you had, but from the staff survey, there was quite a number of things, but my brain went to the stuff on the elementary side. So I fully agree with you. Like, I have 2 small children. I absolutely think we should, give the schools as much funding as possible. I also think we should, as we talk about the budget, just remember that what we're getting from them would be like if Beth was doing this budget for the town in September, October, and we would have a lot less information to play with and a lot less information to put into what do our local receipts look like and what is that. So I don't want us to. We're very focused on the school's budget because it's higher than anticipated. But, if we are to look at this, like our health insurance is higher than anticipated as well, and we haven't talked about that at all. The programs that we talked about, a planning board intern, health department, I mean, that municipal money adjustments and expenses that we're talking about is less a portion of health insurance, right?
Do you want me to run through?
Sure. Does that work?
It does not work.
Then I guess we're running through the attachments.
Copies if anybody wants it. I handed it out to the audience.
I pulled it out, so it's this one, right, Beth?
Yes.
Thank you. So I think I'll just preface it by saying that the January 10th budget, the budget summit, the purpose of that is it's a pre-final budget, right? And the idea is to have a conversation about priorities, goals, and where we see ourselves, and not to come into that meeting with final numbers, right? I came to the board and to that summit with the list of asks that I had gotten from the municipal side that went above our level services budget, right? And we've had this conversation over the past few years. In a few of those years, we've been able to add a few positions on the municipal side, like adding a second person in our IT department, which in terms of redundancy is probably the most critical position we've added in the past few years, in my opinion. So the changes that I've made to the budget model and since that meeting on January 10th is a combination of getting some new and better information from what we had a couple weeks ago, and from recognizing that this is a very difficult budget season, and that on the municipal side we've pulled back on all of those new initiatives except for one. So the school budget, as I mentioned, when we do our budget modeling, which we start doing in November, we start working with Stacy. We put together our budget model that has a look back of the past 10 years of what the growth rates have been in every category, and then we use that as a forecasting tool. And then as we develop the next year budget, we start adding in real numbers. And where we don't have real numbers yet, we rely on those 10-year estimates. So when I came to you on the 10th, we were still using those 10-year estimates in some of those budget models. Now we're several weeks out from there, and so we have real numbers, or closer to real numbers. So the budget model has been updated to reflect the 5.84% increase that the school department presented at the 10th. On the 10th, it's also been updated to include the revised estimate for the vocational educational budget that we received from the school department. I've also the Historical Commission is applying for a grant that requires matching funds. Michelle just signed the grant this morning, and so they've requested an additional $12,500 be included in the budget so that we can match those grants. My intention is to include that. If we get to town meeting, they should know before town meeting whether or not they receive that grant. If they don't receive it, we'll have FinCom remove it. The new initiatives that were requested that I have removed from the budget, the planning board had requested $15,000 for an intern. Health department had requested the addition of a second part-time community health project manager. The Council on Aging had requested funding for an additional driver, which I believe they have grant funds available to pay for, so I don't think that service will go away completely. The police department has typically been funded for 2 cruiser replacements. I've removed one of those so that it's a single cruiser replacement, and removing the request for an additional custodian at the Lynch School, which I think is actually a really important priority and is something that should be included as part of a larger conversation if we're going into a potential override in the future. So those were the adjustments that were made, large adjustments. Obviously, there were a few other tweaks made on the expense side. The one new initiative I did include in the budget was in the building department. There was a request to increase their building inspector hours from 20 to 25 hours a week as 3 inspectors. It has about a $40,000 increase overall in the budget. I think to me that was an important initiative to keep in there, and really it's not an initiative, it's really just supporting the existing staff we have to be able to provide the services that we need to be able to provide for our residents in that department. On the revenue side, we went and took a real hard look at the local receipts, and working with Stacy, we're recommending increases over what we had talked about on January 10th of about $575,000 in local receipts. I think these are really at the upper end of what we feel comfortable with in those categories.
Beth, can you just, I noticed we increased investment earnings by $200,000, and it seems like that's a number we should have been able to predict pretty darn close based on...
It's hard. So it's a matter of the past few years we've had a huge amount of investment earnings because we've borrowed for Lynch and just the way our cash flow has worked, right? But in the past, like in this minimum, that's why I listed it in here, right? 48,000. That was just in 2022, right? So that was just a few years ago that we were earning basically nothing in investment income.
Right.
So it's a function of both the market, right, in terms of interest rates, and also just our cash flow in terms of borrowings. So I think 500,000 is on the upper end, just given that we'll do our final borrowing for Lynch this March, and the school project will be completed in September. So we're really going to pay out most of that money, in the first quarter of the fiscal year. And so the other items that were increased on the revenue side, we had talked at the meeting on the 10th about an allocation from the health insurance stabilization funds. I've recommended 125,000, which matches exactly what we put into it at Springtime meeting. Release of overlay funds. So the Board of Assessors just voted on Friday morning to release $400,000 in overlay funds, which is good news that we can put towards the budget. In the past, we used that towards a capital project. I think given where we are financially in terms of the budget deficit, that putting it towards operating makes sense. Local receipts, as I mentioned, we increased parking meter funds. Stacy went back and ran the numbers for that, and I think we had recommended 50,000 coming from that funds on the 10th, and we feel like we can bump that up to 80,000. The unallocated wage piece. So Stacy had included a memo in the packet about this. So this is a practice that the town has done forever in terms of rolling forward unallocated wage accounts, and it has DLS brought it forward to Stacy as a concern, and so we are now going to be required to close out the unallocated wage account at the close of the fiscal year, and so it will close to free cash. And so for the purposes of budget planning, our assumption is that we would vote that same amount of money that was closed out to free cash to fund the next year's budget. So it's a wash in terms of like the dollar value, but the funding source has been adjusted in the budget model.
But in future years, wasn't that unallocated wage, did that build up over 2 or 3 years?
Which we can no longer do.
Right.
Yes.
So we won't have, it's in a way a stabilization fund that's going away.
So I think we could longer term, if we wanted to set up a separate stabilization fund, that's something we could talk about.
Yeah,
I'm not sure we're quite ready to do that in terms of for Springtime meeting.
Yeah, no, I'm not suggesting that. I was just making the point that that's gone away, and you consume it in 12 months or it's gone.
It's gone. Yep. Right. So if if we don't settle all of our contracts in FY26, then the money that we would have rolled forward into 27 to pay for FY26's wages has gone away.
Yep. Thank you.
And then the state aid number just increased $100,000 based on what was issued by the governor. So just going through kind of very, high level where we are, total municipal departments is about a 2.9% growth over FY25. That includes the estimate for unallocated wage. Vocational energy contributory requirement, all those numbers are fairly locked in. The two pieces that are, we're still waiting on some additional information. Obviously, the school budget, which they'll, I think, vote at the end of this week, and then the health insurance number. So we've had a really good run for the past few years in terms of the health insurance, and our luck is definitely, I think, running out this year. We had been advised by Maya, who we're a member of Maya. We have a Blue Cross Blue Shield policy in the fall to expect a 10% increase on our active employee plans. Coupled with the increases in the retiree plans, the overall projected estimate increase for that line item was 12.7%. Maya just released their general information over the weekend at the MMA conference, and their average for community increase for active plan employees is 14.8%, and they have a range of 9.9 to 19.9. We don't know exactly what our rate will be. They told me they wouldn't have that information till February 15th, which I have pushed back on. But I think it's likely that it would be higher than the 10%. So, if we...
So our consultant, Ms. Ken, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Did he take a look at our loss history and say, based on our loss history, I think it's 12.7%, or is that a hopeful number and it's actually going to be 15%?
Yeah, so that's what, when we looked at the data last fall, we met with them end of October, early November.
Yep.
We were able to look at the claims history to that date, and so now we'll be looking at, they said last week that they're going to be using claims history through December to set our rate.
Yes.
And so Ken will be working with them to look at that data.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. So I think this is going to be higher than 12.7%.
And there's no additional levers we can pull because we went through dental and everything else.
We've done everything short of plan redesigns, which I think it's really too late to do that before we have our open enrollment in May.
Yep.
So it's frustrating to be in this position. 10% was obviously a very high increase. 14.8% is significantly higher. Top of the range, 19.9 is like borderline catastrophic, right? So that'll be something, that we'll be working on over the next few weeks. So all told, again, with that unknown specifically related to health insurance, we have a deficit of $2.9 million. As Michelle mentioned, we kind of looked at a couple ways to potentially bring that down. One of the things we talked about was the OPEB contribution. The town has been setting aside $350,000 a year towards OPEB. You have adopted a policy that once we receive that pension windfall, we'll be putting that money towards OPEB. So FY26 is actually, based on the current actuary projections, is the peak pension payment. In 27, we start going down. So in 26, the pension contribution is $7.46 million, round numbers. In 27, the contribution is 6.93. So the idea is that difference of $900,000 would go to OPEB. So this isn't something I would typically recommend, but it's something we want to talk about, given that we're so close to the end of our funding horizon. That 1 year of $350,000 is probably, not as significant, knowing that we're going to be looking towards, in the next few years, a much more significant contribution with that pension windfall coming. So, and then I ran the numbers with the revised school budget. If we were, considering that's just round numbers, we can rerun anything that we may want to talk about in terms of reduced growth rate there. So that's where we are.
On the healthcare side, too, I'll say one of the healthcare stabilization fund strategy was to avoid what we saw as somewhat of a expected outlier, 10% year, right? So we're beyond that at this point, and to also avoid the option of having to make a plan change. So the investment with kind of protecting and stabilizing our healthcare was to say to our employees, we're not going to have a plan change that ultimately reduces your benefits, which often happens when you're looking at a plan change, when you have a large deficit going, when you're on fumes from an override from several years ago. So, I would say I wouldn't not look at a plan change, under these circumstances at this point. I think we've landed on a good plan that our employees support and like and works, and I think we have some trust and faith in Maya as well. It's the exposure is what it is.
And plan changes are disruptive, and we're doing them every 2 to 3 years.
Right. Well, that was the thing.
It's a lot.
It's disruptive to our employees and staff, and also to management. I mean, it's a heavy lift, and it's rolling the dice, because we know that you get that first year that's good, and then in a couple of years
it all catches up.
It catches up with you, and it just balances out, right?
So if we're looking at Beth's, so first of all, remove OPEB, $350,000. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes, I should say.
Okay.
You think so? Okay.
Well, I mean, it's got to come from someplace.
Yeah.
would I prefer to do that? No. And if the numbers come in better, I'd be like, let's put it back in.
Yep, that's true.
Right.
It could go back in. Local aid could be different.
Yes.
Yep. School number, 2.9 or whatever, 5.8%. Beth had a number at 5%. We'd built the model at 4.94. What do people think about that?
It's likely low. It says likely low
Yep.
at 5%.
Oh, I'm sure 5.84 is low.
Right.
It is, and I think that they, from the fall discussions, it looked like they were closer to 7.
I was going to say 7%.
At the outset, without, any additions. And so I think they've been working hard to keep that number low. I mean, I appreciate Michelle's point on the reversion side and not spending too much at the front of it, but I think it's hard for them to plan as well when their exposure is contractual obligations, and it looks like a lot of their exposure is existing employees and column moves and step moves and things like that, right? So it's just the function of having a workforce that stays and improves.
Yep. And I
So-
think the other thing to put at, maybe not just to not focus on the contracts that haven't been settled is, we looked at $75 per pupil in foundation and Chapter 70, it's pegged at 6% in the governor's budget. Again, the House could cut it. Last year it landed at 4%. But that's $430,000 to $640,000, depending if it lands at 4% or 6%. So there's likely money coming in June, which I think would give me comfort to cut that number by $400,000 and wait for local aid.
I'm not comfortable expecting anything outside of our town right now. I think that there is a growing risk on relying on outside aid that is only going to get larger and larger, and I'm not willing to put the schools in that position.
Well, there's a growing risk for budgeting for contracts you haven't settled, too.
Yeah.
And I'd rather not. We'll take that problem on when the contracts are settled, and we'll know about local aid at roughly the same time. We can deal with it at Springtown meeting or Falltown meeting, depending on when those contracts settle. So there's multiple ways to get at it, but I think that's where I'm at. I think I'm the only person at the table thinking that, but that's okay.
No, and I think it's good. It's good to be having the conversations. I mean, I think when we look at the state aid, it's really just coming in to offset the expenses for special education transportation, which is another big line item that we see moving up year after year after year. Yep. So, it's just the limited funds that we get from the state, are kind of already spoken for from, required increases. So.
Yeah, and I'd rather us not kick the can down the road, and the school committee is going to go into negotiations with the majority of their units to let them, be able to support the teachers.
Negotiate and say we have zero, right?
Do you want to pay teachers?
No, if it's like we have nothing in the budget for this 5% raise, we have nothing. It's like.
I don't want to be the person who says that and loses excellent teachers. We have very good teachers.
Okay, we have 2%.
Teachers who are here and who...
We don't negotiate.
I know, we don't negotiate it, but
we know our
I
tax
don't want
rates
to
grow
put
at
the school
2.5%.
committee in the position that they're...
Yeah, if we were running a business, I might look at this differently, but we're providing services to our citizens. We're providing education to our kids. I just have a lot of problems with this approach, and I think the schools deserve what they're asking for at the very least. And, I get the idea that these contracts are unknown and they will be unknown for a while, but I think we get to demonstrate that we want the schools to be, funded in a way that can make sure that they can attract good teachers with good negotiations, not driving a hard bargain necessarily, because that's, I don't think, how you get a good school system.
I think you got to kind of balance that with a couple of things. First of all, we have a lot of tax increases coming through. $800 or $900 for Lynch. Mm-hmm. We've got money coming, maybe the same amount for the culvert. And earlier I heard we were interviewing candidates, and we said, well, we want young candidates, and like, I want a diverse community. I want older, more experienced residents like myself. So I'm sensitive to balancing the need for a good school system and only making it for elitists who can afford to live here. Because we talk about affordable housing, but we have a whole bunch of folks who are on fixed income that we need to be considerate of. And we don't mention that enough in the budget process. And I don't have a solution for it. I just think there's going to be a general awareness for that constituency, because we serve all of them, not just people with kids in school.
Not to discount that, we also have 2 Title I schools. And so, I mean, it is younger families, but there are families in schools who are not here because they're able to pay into schools. So I just want to make that statement, but not to.
I don't know what the point is, but I do know that we don't want older folks to leave town because they don't have children in the school system. They help subsidize the great programs that we have. That's all.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, John. I mean, I think that we need to kind of step back, and it's a question of the wants versus needs. And, you know, when we are looking to add things that we would like on the town side, we certainly want to support things there. And at the same time, we've got to manage the cost for people, because it's forcing people out, and it's not a way to have a socioeconomically diverse community, which we've heard from residents that they desire. So when we create a budget that ultimately furthers Winchester as an economically gated community, then it sends the message to people that have invested in the community for a long time, paid for schools, overrides, everything, that we don't care about them. And I think that's not the message from the board. And finding balance of supporting the schools as well as keeping water and sewer rates lower and some of the other things that we do, like, I think that is what people expect us to be doing when we're sitting here. And so that's so I appreciate your comment, John. I think it's right. So thank you.
Okay. Beth, I don't know what else you need.
Yeah, so I mean, I think
We're still waiting on, obviously you'll wait on another number. It may not be on change from the school committee at the end of the week, but
right.
You'll get something.
So I think the only direction I heard was to remove the 350 in OPEB, which will bring that number down a little bit, that deficit, and then, you know, we'll wait till we get that health insurance number, which I think is going to be more than where we currently have it budgeted. So unless I hear anything from you all.
So when the health insurance renewal comes in, the percentage, does Ken go through it and say, okay, this doesn't make sense, or we should put, I know it's not like dealing with the Blue Cross Blue Shield, but is there any opportunity to improve upon, or is it just an edict? Here's your 14.7%, you own it, and just sit there and just take it?
Yeah. So I think in the time that I've been acting town manager or town manager, every year we've been able to find a way to reduce the number. So the first year, in the first budget, we changed providers. Right? We went from Harvard Pilgrim to Maya Blue Cross, and we had a 4% decrease prior year. And then we did the Medicare buy-in, and then we changed our dental insurance. So every year there's been, the first year was a big adjustment. Every year after that, it's been a 1 or 2 or 3% additional reduction that we've been able to get on our renewal rate. And this is the first year where we're seeing this very high increase given to us by Blue Cross, and we don't have any of those like tricks up our sleeve to be able to.
Right. So, so I was looking more like an actuarial basis. Like he looks at this and says, this does not look right in comparison.
He goes through the loss ratio.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Part of it is that in our contracts with providers at the municipal level, we don't have access to our own data, right? So we forego, right? So we can't see it. So we're kind of taking their word for it that it's a year of high exposure, and this is what it is. So I have some feelings in that, but you know, it's not the time or the place. Michelle's heard from me, but you know, that's the hard part about it is, you know, when we created the Healthcare Stabilization Fund, we were rolling at a couple years of 0% increases and thought we were geniuses, you know, and we were seeing the GIC, everybody jump onto the GIC, and those going
8,
up
12, 14.
Yes, right. So we were patting ourselves on the back, and but it
the
comes.
train caught us.
They catch you at some point. So that's maybe from a policy perspective a better reason for us to put more money into the healthcare stabilization fund over the years when we have those reversions. On the other hand, maybe it shows your hand a little bit if you've got a pot of money sitting there and somebody. I don't want to be too cynical about it, but it's helpful to have it there, and I think it protects our employees. So.
Okay. So we can maybe wrap up this for now, and we have, I think, just select board updates. That's the next order of business.
Make sure I didn't hear anything else.
I don't think so. Let's see what the health insurance comes in
I
as.
hope that if we do see reversions in May, that maybe we would, in advance of that, just have a policy that the prioritization of that is to go back to OPEB and to fund that line item once we get it, because I don't feel comfortable not funding that personally.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yes,
I know,
I'm for that.
It's not a recommendation I thought I would
Right.
be making, for
Right.
sure. But it's, given how close we are to that transition, it's on the table.
Okay. All right, thanks, Beth. So I know one select board update is town manager review. I don't know if others have other updates, but I'll let Bill start, because I know that we'd all get a copy of it, we'd all communicated, at least I had with us, to give some feedback on both the tool, and then I think we have to think about the timing as well. So September, October is out the window, but here we find ourselves in January.
Yeah, so I've received feedback from two people. Michelle had a couple questions just about the process in terms of who was collecting the material. That has to be the clerk. It can't be a member of the select board because that's a violation of OML. And I don't think it's something that we would task to outside counsel.
I think it's the HR director.
Labor Council recommended the select board clerk, but.
I thought you meant the town clerk.
Oh, no. Oh, I'm sorry. No, Mary. No.
There you go.
Mary Ellen has enough. And then,
Okay.
But good save.
I thought John was the clerk of the select board, isn't it? No, is that not right? I don't know.
I've never heard that.
I asked if it was Patty. I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Well, let's say we resolve that.
It's Patty. How's that?
Oh, that's fine. That's
Okay.
fine.
Patty has to do the work of collecting our reviews and then aggregating them. And then the other feedback I received was, first off, I had a couple different categories with subcategories within them. Do we just want to do, one score per large category, or do we want to do like all the 5 subcategories as well, which gets more detailed? I have no preference one way or the other.
I thought it was excellent what you had done. That's why I didn't have any comments for you.
Cool.
Yeah,
I think
I
it's
think
evolved
keep it.
over time to really reflect what.
I want old school, maybe comments in blue ink, so I'll image them and send to you. But thank you, Mike, just to echo what you said, it's an excellent job. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And then the other feedback, actually this might have been from Michelle, was how we want to set the goals for next year. And then also from Anthea, revising the review of goals from the prior year. So with Anthea's point, because it's easier, we might give Beth goals that she succeeds in, does great, fails at, hopefully not, or goals that actually don't become our goals. We drop them to the side. And so the idea from Anthea was just to add a 4th column on the review of past priorities that acknowledges we might have dropped something along the way.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, so that's cool. I'm going to do that. I'll add it in.
So Bill, when you
I'm
do
going to add one more comment. As I'm looking at that page, can you just do a search for Board of Selectmen and replace it with Select Board, please?
Yes. I took a lot of this from a prior review, so my apologies if something...
I just noticed it as I'm staring at it, and
Has its way of creeping in there.
It so does. Just when you think you caught them all.
it goes to Select Board's past.
So, Bill, when you were doing your research and compiling this, it seems like it's great to do this once a year, but there should be like continuous feedback. There should be a policy for continuous feedback, like maybe quarterly. It has to be like institutionalized because the chair changes, right? And I know I think I mentioned to you, Michelle. I don't know where this fits in here, but there should be something because, in fairness to the town manager, I know there are times in here where you give a year's notice and so forth, but it seems like it would be much more constructive to track things on a quarterly basis and just set aside an hour to say, let's just take a look at this and what we set out for goals.
I have no trouble making this quarterly. I might say
No, I'm not saying for
twice
the
a
whole
year.
group. I'm just saying but there should be a separate feedback from the chair to the town manager on a maybe quarterly basis. I don't know if that exists right now.
It doesn't, not in any sort of formal basis. I do understand that Michelle gives regular feedback to Beth, and I would hope all chairs would do that. If you want to make that a more formal process.
Well, if we give her, he, she, or they, a roadmap, then I would think that we'd want to keep them on the roadmap just for their own sanity and expectations of raises and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Versus once you, it has nothing to do with the annual review. It's just more of a process.
Objectives, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I just don't understand what you want me to do.
No, I'm asking. Well, I didn't know if that should be part of the review process. Like we do an annual review, but we
Progress
commit as
reports or check-ins?
a quarterly check-in
Goal
to review
milestone
the goals.
check-ins?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
It probably makes sense
Something
for
like
us
that.
to kind of develop a policy around this with a timeline.
Yes.
And say whatever the review is by the select board that's sitting here is done on this schedule, and this is the objective, and if people want to go change it, but that framework needs to be there again for management's sake to know where everything is. And as Bill was saying, I mean, I think the hardest part about this job for a town manager is that there's always something new that walks in the door that's the shiny bright object, and we can chase it, and it may not be on anything that we've said, and it's unfair to then judge somebody's work on something that just walked in the door. We just decided to prioritize because we're volunteers and we don't know any better. So
Yeah. So I'm all in favor of that, in doing more regular communication on anything. I think for the sake of this evening, though, we just need to get an annual system down.
I agree.
So let's focus on getting that done. So the only other feedback I received, this was Michelle, was trying to make sure that we were putting in some sort of specific or measurable or realistic or time-limited aspects to the goals for the coming year. And that really kind of comes in with, I can add some instruction there, but it's going to come down to however we fill those out ourselves. And so unless there's anything,
Thanks. No, I mean, one thing is, one thought is we just put in the page on SMART goals.
Exactly.
At the end, but another thought would be that, we have this as the goals will be discussed and agreed upon during the town manager's evaluation. So, it could be, here's coming year's goals, you put in the page on SMART goals, and then there's a little bit more structure to the conversation of how we actually
check in on those
go about
goals
those as a group. In that, here's document, and then once we get there, we get there.
Yeah.
We'll get you guidance on SMART goals.
Sure.
Sorry, I heard you saying it, and it came from Michelle.
Like
I knew exactly what was going on.
Yeah, because I don't know that sounds like a term of art that I've never heard before.
So I was like, all right.
If you want to send, this is what I would propose.
We'll get you that.
If you can send me that in the next couple days,
Yes.
then by this weekend, I can circulate a final form. And I think we consider this, like we've noticed the fact that we're going to be reviewing the town manager for months now. It sounds like we have an agreement on the form. Beth is actually the only one who has not weighed in with any questions or concerns. Does it work for you? It works for you? Great. So I think we're at...
that helps with your review.
Yes.
Check.
I think
Amenable to the tool.
Yeah. I think we're at the point where if I can distribute a final form, this weekend or so, we all take 2 weeks to fill it out, and, the meeting after that is when we give Beth her performance review, which does have to be done in public session.
So by February 24th, we think we'll have that. Feedback to the clerk by the week of February 10th, and probably February 24th. We'll have to make some room in the agenda.
Yeah. And if you...
But maybe no later than the first week in March, the first meeting in March.
I think so.
If not the 24th and March 10th. Okay.
Yeah.
It's on all of us to get it done.
Yeah, and we get it done this time around. I think we should try and do it earlier next year. We look at what worked and what didn't, and we revise it. But, probably, I don't know the best time Beth might think to be reviewed, if it's like December or January, but heading into town meetings probably the worst.
I think it's less about the review piece, but the goal setting piece, I think it has to be linked to when you all are doing your board goal setting, which is
Work
typically
plans.
been in the
The
summer.
summer.
Right? So we're kind of off schedule of that right now, but somehow those two things have to be linked.
We have to shift back.
That's a very good point, and that might be like the tickler for John's more regular check-ins, where we have a big annual review and a summer goal-setting review.
Yeah.
Well, John can say that because he's leaving, so he's now requiring us to do all this
Makes
more work in
sense.
this summer.
He doesn't have to do the work. And that's the last thing. If you guys, if you
totally makes
don't give Beth reviews, we can't complain about the good job or bad job she does. It's all good jobs, in my opinion, Beth. So just like anything else, let's give her some feedback so she can just serve us all better.
So, Bill, why is this in public session? This just seems so odd.
It's required.
It's required.
Required by who?
By law. Yeah.
By the open meeting law?
Mm-hmm.
We've always
But
done it.
if you two guys did it, or you two guys did it,
No, it's
That doesn't seem right.
why?
You would have
It's more private. Okay, so how would you like to have your review in front of everybody here and TV camera?
You would have our
So,
collective
Michelle?
feedback, so it's
I want to talk to you about something.
It's what everybody does in
Like
the
you
state,
hold back.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what we've done historically. I mean,
Just
get on.
I'm talking private guy here. I'm like,
Oh, it's weird, but if you, John, I'll tell you, look at it, Google it, you'll find an article about every town manager's performance review that's had one in the past X number of years. And sometimes they have gotten a lot of press because there's a lot of fireworks, and a lot of times it's just town manager does a good job.
yeah.
You know, move on to the next story. So,
Nothing stops you from sharing your own personal feedback with Ms. Rudolph at any time, John Fallon.
yeah.
But the measurable goals that we think
Is
we're
that
all
red
working
pen?
toward should be written down.
Oh, thank you. Smart goals.
Thank you. Okay. So, form, you already have that update. So form goes up by the end of this week, feedback due by February 10th or so. We can publish that timeline.
Yeah.
Okay. So before kids go away for a vacation. Okay. And the tool is the tool with a couple of tweaks. Okay. Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you. Any other select board updates? I don't have any.
I was just going to say, I was at the Mass Municipal Association conference this weekend, and it was great. A lot of stuff to discuss in the future, not right now, obviously, but attended some great sessions on affordable housing, climate change, conflict resolution, and budgeting as well. So very, very active and great opportunity. So thank the town for sending me there. Appreciate it.
If you picked up a town manager review form, shred that thing. We're
Yes.
good. Go ahead.
I'll catch up with you later.
Yeah, you know where to find me.
I do.
Planning board's working on their design guidelines for North Main Street.
Yep.
So if anybody has any interest in weighing in on that, start talking to your planning board people. They're also taking a look at the site plan review bylaw and trying to figure out what the future of that. Yeah, what the future of that should be, either as it is or how it applies to ADUs or anything else. Whether that comes before Springtown meeting, I don't know, but.
And Anthony and I are on the schedule for next Tuesday, the 4th, for government regs. So I'll circulate it or ask Patty to, but specifically, is there any feedback on the select board bylaw? Like, I think it's chapter 3. So is there anything that we would want to see tweaked in the select board specifically? I think that's one of the things in the agenda. And then any other feedback on bylaws. And I might make a statement about like people serving on elected boards. But anyway, we are on the schedule for next Tuesday. We spoke with Colin and Megan. So I think that was an open item from last week, and we settled on a date. And if there's any feedback on the select board's specific bylaw that you want to sort of funnel through us, please send it along. It's not terribly lengthy. All right. And John's running for town meeting. There's that.
Yes.
Anyone from Precinct 3 in the audience, please approach John at the end of the meeting.
Thank
Okay.
you for the
More
support.
campaigning at the table.
Just approach John, that's all I said. Okay, anything else, or we can adjourn?
Well, we could approve the consent agenda.
Oh,
as
that.
printed.
Yes, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Is it
now,
adjourned? Second.
all those in favor? Okay, thank you, meeting's adjourned, thank you, WinCam.